It's still. I say it's pretty high percentage still.
You don't want to cut no slack today, huh?
I know. Yeah.
We'll call our meeting to order. It's good to see each and every one of you here today. For the record, we've got one supervisor that called in. He's not going to be here today. And then we got another one, that's Mike Carter. And then Cundiff, Tommy Cundiff's on vacation. So we're down two, but we still got a quorum and everything. So we'll work with that. Had Mike down for the invocation, and Mr. Tatum's going to take care of that for us. And then Ronnie Mitchell's going to do the pledge to the flag. All right, Tim. All stand, we'll.
It's good to see everyone out today. If you will, join me in prayer. Our most kind and gracious Heavenly Father, we come to you today, Lord, just thanking you, praising you for all you do for us, Lord. We thank you for this opportunity that we have to serve you and serve the citizens of Franklin County. Father, we pray that every decision we make and everything that we do will be based on following your will and your guidance. And Father, we ask you for wisdom and leadership as we go through this meeting and as we conduct our everyday lives. In Jesus' most holy and precious name I pray and ask it all. Amen.
Amen. Just before Ronnie does the pledge, I meant to do that to tell Tim, Mike Burnett's not with us today. He got a phone call this morning around 3 o'clock. His father-in-law passed away, and that's why he's not here. So I meant to tell you that for you prior. So if you'll remember that family, Ron.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, the approval of the agenda. Is there, I've got a couple of amendments to do before we do that. I'll go ahead and do mine now. Understand that we, around 3:15 to 3:30, we're gonna have, they were trying to put some final figures together. That's the Western Virginia Water Authority. And they're gonna bring us an update on the water tower at Union Hall, and also an update on the sewer lift at Westlake. And the numbers are really looking good. And that's supposed to be here. So we need to do that, to add that to our agenda. And then something else that needs to be approved, and we can do it all with one motion. Tommy Cundiff wants to join in on the telephone with that update. So he's going to be standing by on the phone, and so we have to approve that as well. So are there any other amendments, deletions to the agenda? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion.
I will, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
Second.
All right. All in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. It passed unanimous. So when we get ready to do that, Western Virginia, if you'll call Tommy on the phone, he'll be standing by, so he'll be there for that. All right, so here, no any other thing else, we'll move on to the consent agenda. I would remind the supervisors that if you have any questions or comments before that, the consent agenda, if you want to bring them up, call staff, they can probably answer the questions. But what's your pleasure on the consent agenda?
Make a motion we approve as presented.
Got a motion for it to be approved?
Second.
You got a second? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Right, no opposition. Ms. Mitchell, you look lonely down there all by yourself. You okay? Okay.
We need to let her move up there.
You want to come up? You can.
If we could switch them.
We'll switch you up if you want to. You're fine, okay. We'll
Yeah,
have
she may be smarter than we are.
Yeah, maybe she is. But anyway, all right. Todd Daniels, resident agency for the VDOT. Guess who's Todd's really changed and Todd's looking better all the time. Yeah, and I'm telling you, I told you before, Lisa, he could be replaced.
That's right. You
Huh?
can. You can.
Lisa's going to present today for Todd.
I am. Good afternoon, Chairman, members of the board, Mr. Whitlow. Stand before you to go over our report for the month. Just a couple things. As far as maintenance, we have 2 pipe replacements in our Callaway area, Route 643, Dillon's Mill, and 602 Callaway Road. They are completed and both surfaces have been paved. Also, Isolane, we had a structure there. I think it was a box culvert. Route 695, it's off of 6 Mile Post Road, probably in your area. That has been paved. I know we had some concerns about the surface of it, but it has been paved now. All right, you've probably seen us working out here on 220, just right outside at the first exit if you're coming southbound. We have a pipe replacement going on there. We've kind of halted for now because we're waiting on the drop inlet structure for the median. It hasn't came in yet, so our work is a little halted until that gets here. But we'll pick back up with that and finish that project. Moving on to land development. I do want to note on Scruggs Road, toward the end, beyond Blue Water Drive, beyond Dudley Amos, toward the end of that section down to Bernard's, we have, the Western Virginia Water Authority, they are doing a water line extension on that end. So you may have seen some activity there, should be some flagging operations, but that's taking place there. One other thing I want to note, they haven't been permitted yet, but I've seen a lot of the Chantel permits come in recently, probably about 10 different ones. So the grant money that they have been given, you're going to see some of that work starting. I noticed some of it was on 116. A lot of it's aerial work, but there is some underground work. So that once we permit those, you're going to see a lot of activity in that section. Timberline Road, Route 865, that is a rural rustic project, and construction is underway, and from what I understand, it has been surface treated now. So there's still some work to be done to finalize that, but the surface is on. So that's been a long time coming, for sure. We didn't have any traffic studies this month that were requested. Let me back up to 220. Out here, the southernmost entrance for the business park. The left turn lane has been completed. We will be installing some signs on Friday. The pavement markings still need to be installed. I don't have a date on when those are going to be done. So we do have it closed off just because we don't have the proper signage up for it. So it is closed off. You'll notice that. And they're working on the nose of the island there, so folks won't be able to turn left out of there. That's ongoing. That should be completely completed by like the 21st, I think, is kind of where we are with that. Again, no traffic studies to note. And that's really all I have, so I'll open it up for you guys.
Anybody got any questions for Lisa, AKA Todd?
Thanks for being here, Lisa. I did speak with Todd Brown last week and told him I'd bring this up in the meeting today, and Lisa is aware of it. But I'd like the board's support to talk to VDOT about putting down some of the high friction asphalt on 220 south of Pleasant Hill Road. Just about 90% of the time when it rains, we have an accident right there before Willow Creek Road. We did have a fatality last week. And I would like for VDOT to look into that, as well as the curves right there below Smith Tire. It seems to keep creating accidents that I think can be avoidable. People that aren't familiar with the area traveling through, when the roads are wet, they're very slippery right there. And we've had some really bad accidents. Had a really bad one last week. So I'd like to look into that, please.
Okay. And I do want to, just for everybody's knowledge, anytime there is a fatality, we get the report and our traffic folks go out and they study it. So we'll just make note that you've brought that up. So we'll just kind of put that on their radar also.
Thank you.
So.
What else? Just FYI, we had that open house. We were invited to come out for the bank, the credit union up on the hill,
Oh,
right there
Val's.
where you put that
Yeah.
turning lane in, Valley Star.
Mhm.
Every one of those board members come and wanted to know when that turning lane was gonna be. So you made a bunch of people happy there.
Yeah.
A bunch of people happy.
I was happier when it was open for a few days and I could actually use it. But Todd,
You gonna stick around for
I will.
Brian's report?
I will.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thanks,
Appreciate it.
Lisa.
Lisa?
All right. Moving right along. Lane Carter, your turn.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. So for our monthly finance report, we're first quarter of the fiscal year through September 30th. So we would be looking at about 25% what we would expect to see this point in time of the year. So looking at your percentages, our revenues that are monthly are looking good. They're meeting that benchmark. Several are exceeding that benchmark, pretty much all of them actually. The general property taxes, of course, will not. That's once or twice a year now for real estate. And so we're getting ready to get into that collection season. So you'll see that percentage change as we go through October, November, December. For expenditures, the only one is above that 25% benchmark range is general and financial. And that, if you remember, is typically where we have our contracts, our insurance, all those things that are front-loaded at the start of the year. So everything else looking very good as far as we would anticipate it to be. To graphically show that, you can see on the revenue side, a little bit of revenue growth year over year. The blue line is the new year. And so you can see a little bit of growth as we would anticipate. Breaking that down into your categories, so property taxes, you can see an increase in property taxes. That's about a $750,000 increase compared to last year. And that's pretty much generated by the switch to twice a year real estate. So because we had a due date of June 5th, we're still collecting taxes in the new fiscal year that previously bills wouldn't even have been generated by this point in time. For your other local taxes, pretty much right in line with where we were this point last year. From your state revenue, we do see an increase. That tends to be a timing and an allocation, so that's really not anything specific that's different. We're in line really with where we would anticipate to be with state revenue this year. So for local sales tax, you can see an increase of about $140,000 year over year through September. So we're still seeing a good increase. We're that light blue line at the top. It's about a 7.8% increase year over year. And we're still ahead of budget. So we're at 29, almost 30% of budget. So we want to be at least above 25 at this point of the year. So sales tax is trending well. For meals tax, we're seeing a similar trend. And as we note on that and transient occupancy, you'll see a dip as you go down through the holidays. As it gets colder, you typically have less collections for these. So it did drop from August, but for September collections, we're still 8.8% above year over year and just over $39,000 and still well ahead of the budgeted projections at this point of the year. Transient occupancy, similar in that we're still seeing a really good year for transient occupancy. It's up 44.6% year over year, about 62,000. And we're already at 83% of budget for the year. So you'll start to see that trend down again as we get into the colder months. And so that'll normalize a little bit as far as the percent of budget. A lot of it's front-loaded because of the summer. It's what we collect over the entire fiscal year. But overall, the average is still looking very well. So for expenditures, you can see through September, we're a little below where we were at this point in time last year, which is good news. To break that down a little further into categories, you can see pretty much, we're about on par with most every category, what we'd expect. See a little bit of an increase there under the public safety functional area, and you'll see it on your health and welfare. So a lot of that at least I'll break down a little bit more health and welfare, but tends to be just personnel, where we increased with the compensation study and just the general 5% that the state funded. So you'll see an increase there. There doesn't appear to be any large expenditures that are driving that. It tends to be more just operational personnel. So for health and welfare, you can see a breakdown. You can see social services, the operating is up year over year. That's the yellow bar. That tends to be operation and salaries again. There's no one particular operating line item that's really driving that increase. They're within budgeted percentages. So social services overall is within budget, that 25% mark that we would expect. And so not a surprise. So it's up, but anticipated within budget. The programs for social services is down for now, and so that's where they pay their benefits out of. CSA, we've kind of mentioned that. We're still seeing an upward trend. I don't know that that'll necessarily abate this year. We'll continue to monitor, of course, and we'll continue to do what we can to keep those costs at a minimum, those cost increases at a minimum. So budget pressures, did want to expand a little bit on that. So, we are going to see increased labor costs. That's going to vary by position, by profession necessarily. We do see increased competition. There's just less people to do the work in general in the economy. Currently, we have 10 job postings, and that actually is 14 vacancies. So sometimes we have one position, we have multiple vacancies in that position, especially in our larger departments. So what we're finding is our professional positions right now are very difficult to hire. What I mean by professional, your bachelor's degree and above positions, your certification type positions, those type things. We're trying to recruit, but they're a little slower to get filled, I'll say. And so we'll monitor that. But fuel and energy, we've had over the summer a little bit of a decrease in fuel prices with the reduction in production from OPEC, which I have a slide later on that we anticipate that increasing as the winter comes in and the heating oil and all of those things, those factors become into play. Capital maintenance and replacement, we're just seeing a skyrocketing increase in capital items, and so especially larger capital items. So while we're okay on some things this year, what we anticipated in the budget last year for a replacement cost could very well be higher than what we have budgeted this year. We're already starting to see that in some vehicle replacements. So there may be a need to supplement some of that just to keep our capital plan going. And of course, that will inform next year's budget process. And so for CSA and social services, we're still seeing increased costs in what we call foster care, or on the social services side, adoption subsidy. Something we're monitoring, trying to work on some things that may help with those costs, but that's a big driver in that budget, that health and welfare that we're talking about when we look at the budget right now. That seems to be a very particular area of interest. So it just, what drives that's probably a multitude of factors. How much ability we have to impact that. Of course, these are probably longer term solutions. That's not just Franklin County, that is statewide, that there are issues in foster homes and placements for youth and things of that nature. So, but we're not immune to it. We're seeing it as well. So I do have an updated, unaudited fund balance, and so we did have our auditors here last week. All indications were it went pretty well, so we're glad to hear that. So they will be back before you, more than likely at your December meeting, to present the audited final results. But as far as the unaudited preliminary number, it looks like unassigned fund balance will be just under $38 million. And so when we take out the budget commitments, and I have that in detail, but the $1,725,000 for the 22-23 budget process, and the $2.3 million for the school year end surplus, that's their cash basis surplus. Apply our 20% policy minimum, that leaves us just over $8.3 million over our policy minimum and unassigned fund balance for the year. So to delve a little bit more into those commitments, I mentioned the $1,725,000. And so this is the breakdown of what was requested and approved as part of the 22-23 budget to restore with year-end surplus. And so that was $1 million back to the budget stabilization reserve, $75,000 back to the capital reserve. That was for the Cool Branch or Pinhook Community Board contribution. And then $650,000 up to for the purchase of Ferrum fire apparatus. And so it looks like total year-end surplus is going to be right around $3.2 million. Of that, $2.3 million is the school system. So that leaves about $900,000 for the county. That being said, so in order to restore, what that means is we're not going to have 1.725 million. We have 900,000. So prioritizing, and this is just me prioritizing, what I would assume would be the progression. We would look to restore and purchase the Ferrum fire apparatus at $650,000, restore the $75,000 to the capital reserve. So what that leaves is $175,000 to restore the budget stabilization fund. So it still leaves us an $825,000 shortfall in that fund that we will not be able to restore at a year-end surplus. And what that also means is that we do not have any excess year-end surplus for department rollover requests. So, if there's a particular item, I think at this point, if we want to fund, what we'd have to look at is probably unassigned fund balance at this point, if we have priorities that we want to accomplish.
Mr. Chairman, may I ask a question?
Sure.
Yes, sir.
Brian, can you go back to the slide? And yeah, forgive me, I got a lot on my mind. I just want to make sure I'm understanding this slide.
Okay.
So what we had asked to pay for with leftover funds was 1.725,
Yes.
and we had 3.2. School carryover, the 2.3. So are we letting them keep their carryover? Is that what we're saying here?
That's the board's discretion. My assumption is, based on historical trend, that the board will do that, but it's certainly at the board's discretion.
Okay, so I think that answers my question. So the 2.3. So when you say there's no year-end surplus funds, well, that's taking the what the school's carryover was out of the equation.
Yes, sir.
Gotcha.
Yes, sir.
I understand now. I was
Okay.
like, that's not adding up. I'm good now. Thank you.
Okay. Yes, sir. Okay. So economic update, we do have another high month of inflation for September. That's at 8.2% year over year. We've seen that trend over 8% for the last several months. One of the things we're also seeing, mentioned that a little bit before, but OPEC has, they approved to decrease the production of oil, so that's going to cause higher gas prices. As that continues to hit, we're already seeing them going up. Because of the inflation in September, you're also seeing an interest rate hike from the Federal Reserve of 0.75%, 0.75. Their next meeting is, unless they schedule an emergency one, is scheduled to be in November. Based on the inflation, that's probably going to be another 0.5 to 0.75% increase in the federal fund rate, which of course increases all of our borrowing costs and things of that nature. So everything gets more expensive. But realistically, the normal inflation, or I guess the target rate, is always around 2%. A little bit higher, a little bit lower, but so we're at 8%, and so there's going to have to be some drastic measures taken to get it to 2%. So I would assume, and I would fully expect that at their meeting in November that rate's going to go up again. And with that, that's the finance report. So happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon, Brian.
Yes, ma'am.
First of all, on the sales tax slide,
Yes, ma'am.
sales tax is lagging, about a month and a half?
Sales tax is, from a reporting standpoint, is 2 months.
It's
So-
2 months.
Yep, so September sales that we reported are really that was collected was really for July.
Okay, so your slide is reflecting that as well.
My slide reflects the date of the actual collection. So for us, we received it from the state in September, and so I'm showing it as September, but that is for July sales collections at the state level. That has
Okay.
then been passed to us in September.
And with respect to the, excuse me, the carryover discussion, You'll recall last year that I strongly advocated for the departments to have their carryover reallocated to them.
Yes.
And obviously, this year, things look very different for different reasons. It would be my assumption and hope, and you tell me how this works, that when we move into the new budget term and the departments have things that were budgeted that for whatever reason didn't get accomplished, the money didn't get spent, what have you, and that money's rolling up into the carryover number. Will the department heads have an opportunity to speak to those items as they prepare the new budget? Would they be viewed as priority, given that they had already been approved for this year? How was that managed?
Right. So anything, for the most part, in a rollover request from a department wasn't approved by the board. So it hasn't been approved yet in any level from that action. But I would say, yes, it would be a priority in that we're now a year behind on some, especially capital items and replacement. That would need to be something I think we as staff in a budget process would look to prioritize.
So is it possible for us to get a look at the carryover for each by department as to what they would like carried over if we had the potential to do that?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Yep, so if that's and I think that was if that's the board's direction, it's just under $1 million in carryover requests from our departments. So we can provide that list, have a discussion on it for board review and possible action for anything that's deemed a priority.
Okay, and the only other thing, Mr. Chairman, I really think that we need to seriously consider fulfilling the capital reserve fund, getting that back up to $1 million. I think we've got some opportunity to do that in a couple different ways. But when we took that money out, we promised to put it back. And I think that we need to follow through with that, because that capital reserve is going to prove to be very beneficial and helpful to the board with the things that are on our plate. Thank you, Brian.
Yes, ma'am.
I agree with what you was talking about there. We took that money out with the assumption that it would be able to be there to replace, and we need to talk about that.
Mm-hmm.
Hopefully, we may have some time later on today in the workshop for that recruitment and retention workshop. If not, we'll have to put some time in there when we have that update in November with hopefully Davenport's going to be here and all of that, and we can do it then.
I do want to ask one more question about the Ferrum apparatus.
Yes, ma'am.
Has that apparatus been ordered?
It's been ordered. If I remember, that was a stock truck essentially, so that was scheduled to be due in the September timeframe, October timeframe. I am not aware that it has arrived yet. I've not seen the invoice.
Obviously, this particular purchase is not going to be part of the new restructuring of replacement schedule and so forth. This happened out of that cycle, correct?
It was part of that cycle. If I remember, the Ferrum truck was the next in the cycle at the time based on that rotation list. And so this fiscal year would have been the planned year for that replacement. It was just a matter of it was in stock, and so that year in surplus was to pay for it. But as far as from that original list, I know that's part of our work is to maybe revise that. But we are current on that list as far as the replacement schedule.
Well, and part and parcel to that discussion, was that apparatus vetted under what we're expecting to see moving forward in terms of criteria?
I don't think so. I think that was approved before the criteria was.
Okay,
Yes,
thank
ma'am.
you.
Yes.
All right. All right, as a segue into your site entrance funding options,
Yes.
we talked about that last month. Get some options, if you recall, set the burnt chimney, volunteer fire department. They called me, that's when you had your family emergency, and so that's what that is. And it was asked, they called back and said that We met with VDOT. They came. Ms. Lewis is here to talk about that today as well. And so if there was any, you was going to tell us where potentially we may have some funds at. And with that, and then questions to Ms. Lewis in regards to permitting and things of that nature. And so we'll leave it up to the two of y'all. I understand, Ms. Lewis, you tell me if I'm wrong, but if we can come up with the funds and we do the county does a resolution, then we can do away with the bonds.
Yeah, you can use a resolution in lieu of a bond.
Say,
You can use a resolution in lieu of a bond.
okay.
Yeah.
And that would help a whole lot with the cost and as far as permitting and things of that nature. VDOT can help us get
Definitely.
those together. I think the crunch is, the truck has been ordered, it's supposed to be here in like November or December, and they was hoping to get that road fixed prior to that because the old truck's rubbing the bottom and the new truck is, help me on that, Mr. Mitchell, about a foot longer?
You about Fairham's?
No,
No, burnt chimney. I
burnt
think it's
chimney.
18 inches.
The new truck's about a foot longer,
It's a lot
foot and a
bigger.
half longer, and everything, so we know if it's a problem now, it's gonna be even a bigger problem then, but hopefully we can get it all resolved prior to, November when that truck's due here. Brian?
Okay. Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. So, as you mentioned, so it was brought to staff's attention for the issue of trucks leaving the Burnt Chimney Volunteer Fire Station, the fire trucks bottoming out as it enters onto 122. And so the Burnt Chimney Department did receive a quote or an estimate. It was going to cost about $40,000 to repair that lot for paving. So the request was made of how could we find that money, and so there's a few pots that we could look at. Some may be needed, some may not be needed for the future. And so just to give you an idea, of course, there are other flexible things we could look at if we want to repurpose, but this is just what I would say at this point is more than likely open and available. So we still have $61,000 left in the COVID response contingency. That was originally used for PPE, those type things, for our departments, cleaning supplies and such. That right now is still in that account, probably won't be needed for COVID response necessarily, could be repurposed. Of course, the board still has your $50,000 contingency in the operating fund. There is just over 102,000 in the capital reserve. That does not include the 75,000 to be restored from year-end surplus, so it's about 180,000 would be the true number, assuming all that goes through. And then, of course, we still have the larger pots of money, which is the 8.3 million over minimum, policy minimum for unassigned. And then assuming the board, through public hearing tonight, appropriates the money for twice a year, you have about 20.5 million out of that capital reserve. And so those are your easier pots to get to as far as how we might accomplish this. And certainly from a staff perspective, we can try and identify any more, help you with some other accounts if we want to look at repurposing.
Okay, has anybody got any questions or comments to Brian?
I do. Did you have a question?
Go ahead, Lord.
Lisa and Brian, does this surface area lie in the right-of-way?
It does. Yes,
Okay, you know where I'm going with this.
probably.
Yeah. Why is this not a VDOT-funded project, given that it's on the right-of-way?
Because we consider it a commercial entrance. And when I say commercial, I don't mean a profitable business per se, but we consider it a commercial entrance.
And Lisa, I'm going to challenge VDOT on that, because in my mind and in the work we do, there is a distinction between commercial and public safety and public services. And if VDOT's looking at a fire station as a commercial zone, and not going to take care of the repairs
because of that. I really want to challenge that.
Sure.
Because this is a public service, it's important to our citizens, and it's in the right of way.
Sure.
And so for VDOT just to say, oh, well, it's commercial, so no, we're not going to participate.
Yeah.
That's not okay with me. This is in my district. I think at a minimum, if I had to negotiate this, it would be a 50-50. But I don't even think that the county should have to spend one penny on this. And so I'm wondering, how can we challenge that?
Well, and I understand that. Like Glade Hill Fire Department, the new one that's being built, we review that as a commercial entrance. And so we have just been consistent with how we treat all of the fire departments. Not just fire departments, but anything other than, I mean, even I'm just going to give an example, a street that has 3 homes on it, we call it a commercial entrance. So anything other than a private entrance is typically a commercial entrance. So, I mean, I do understand what you're saying, and we've all met. We met with Ronnie on site.
I know.
So we're just trying to be consistent in how we treat them. You start doing it for one person, and then it turns into another. So right now, we have looked at it as a commercial entrance. That's what I'll say with that.
Do we not think that maybe that particular policy needs to be reviewed?
We could certainly, that's statewide policy, so,
Yeah, I understand.
yeah. I mean, we could
That just flies so negatively to me.
Sure.
Because it is a public safety entrance. And whatever you're doing down at Glade Hill, I don't care. But I really wanted to raise that. Ronnie, and I appreciate you stepping in and helping with that, very much so. But I just want to get on the record that I just don't like the solution of the county paying for this.
Sure. And I brought up Glade Hill just because we did treat them all like
I
commercial
understand.
entrances. So.
And you're just the messenger. I get it.
I am.
That's, we had this same, well, you and I talked about it before. We had the same conversation today down there when everybody was there. It's my understanding you've got 2, it's either residential or commercial. You don't distinguish between the 2, and this is statewide.
Right.
And that's why we're talking legislators that we would have to go through the state legislators to get that change. And I mean, I'm not above getting that started
Me neither.
all over the state. And, they're, like she said, they just a messenger, and they will help us in what we've got to do. And so, if we need to start something, if we can do a resolution letter or just a letter or something to who we need to send it to, probably our legislators, we can start there and go from there. But the meantime, and that's what we were all talking about last month, we got this new truck coming.
We can't wait on legislators. We can't
We
wait.
can't let that truck get towed. Lee told me the other day when I talked to him that they're starting to go out the gravel driveway below. You already knew that. They're going out the gravel driveway below, not even going there. They put that because they are afraid, when we were talking, and it has settled more since we were down there, that it has undermined. They don't even want to tear up that truck.
Absolutely.
And that's why they're using the lower lot down there.
I would agree with Ms. Smith, but I was just going to add, if you want my 2 cents, I would use the COVID response contingency.
Agree.
Ms. Mitchell, you got anything to add? Well, the other thing, I've already answered that. It's with, VDOT will help us with the permitting, and so we can get this done before that truck gets here. Lee told me that he was expecting that truck. He said it could even be here next week or so in Benton, where they do everything there, and then they'll come here. So, we're talking pretty quick, and they've got that.
Are they, I don't know what the estimate was for, but are they just paving it, or I think it needed a pipe replacement too?
Well,
if
I think
remember.
what, it's my understanding, what you all were talking about is it had to be dug up because apparently from where the seams were, that it's
Okay.
undermining there and it may need a pipe replacement.
Yeah, I think the pipe needed to be replaced. That's what I wanted to know. I didn't know if it was just for paving.
And that was for everything, all inclusive.
Okay,
And he called and asked, and, you know, that's what we asked for.
So
was
we'll
that
be working with a private contractor?
under this, if it comes in under, under the new procurement laws, if it comes in under 50,000, if it comes in under 50, you remember, what, 3 months ago when we raised it? If it comes in under 50,000, we don't have to go through the procurement proceedings. And Lee said there was somebody, Lisa, do you remember it was somebody there that was in the fire department, or somebody that was a member of the fire department that knew somebody? And I think that's where that estimate come from.
Okay, so my curiosity was whether it's gonna be a county chosen contractor or a VDOT contractor.
It won't be a VDOT contractor.
Okay.
It'll be county and Burnt Chimney.
So we're gonna do work on VDOT right away.
That's why we gotta have the permits that they're gonna help us with. That's where we need to get the, that's where we need to get the permitting and everything worked out before, right?
yeah, and that will be the least
That'll
of your
be-
worries.
That'll be a breeze, okay.
Yeah, that'll be a breeze.
Just trying to protect the taxpayers.
Okay. Thank y'all.
Thank you.
If you don't mind, Mr. Chairman, I would address, because you brought up the procurement question. So I think it's, and to Ms. Smith's point, who kind of drives that project? Because if it's a county project, then yes, there are our procurement rules that have to come into play. If the Burnt Chimney Volunteer Fire Department wants to take on that work and the county just gives them a one-time contribution to pay for that, then that doesn't really fall under our procurement rules, because at that point, we're not procuring the work, because we don't own the property.
Right.
And so we do want to, in my opinion, make that delineation of who's in charge of the project and where that money's coming from, because I do think that may change how we as staff and the county have to move forward in getting that work done.
That was my point.
Yes.
My suggestion is that we allocate X amount of dollars to do the project and then turn it over to staff to get with Burnt Chimney to work out the particulars.
Sounds good to me.
Huh?
That sounds good to me.
And if we have to do the procurement, that'll be county can work that out and then the check be written according, maybe to two. I don't know, we're in uncharted territory here. It comes under, I look for this comes under that 50,000 that was asked to be set aside every year for certain projects at there. It may need to come from that fund this year, it could come from there, or it could come from that COVID response money, but I think we need to set a threshold or a cap on the top, how far we willing to go to give county the authority to move forward. Everybody agree with that?
If I may, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, in terms of, Mr. Chairman, I think you mentioned another fund, and of course, on here is if the board will recall, the board did set aside $50,000 for a volunteer fire EMS grant program. That's another fund that's budgeted regardless of where those funds and the board may decide, if the board so chooses, to work with this. I think we would need to work with our legal counsel, again, to the points that have been raised here, because a transfer, a grant, if you will, to a private entity, even a nonprofit entity, such as the Volunteer Fire Department of Burnt Chimney, it is taxpayer dollars and so forth, on that private, if you will, improvement to their property. So I would certainly lean on Mr. Gwynn and his staff, but
I just wanted to reiterate that.
That's what we need to do is, if we decide to go with this, turn it over to staff and let them work out the particulars with it. I guess first off, the question is the board okay with funding part or all of it? We need to put a cap to it.
I mean, you want a motion?
After we talk about it, we need a
Oh.
motion.
Okay.
Well, we've got an estimate, rough estimate of 40,000.
That's a rough estimate. We don't know
It could be
if
more,
it
could be
could be
less.
more. We put a cap of say 45 or 50.
Yeah,
I would do a do not exceed.
yeah.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about, a cap.
Let's
It's not,
do not exceed 50,000.
okay, and then where do you want it to come from? That
COVID
50,000 or the COVID respond contingency?
Either this supervisor contingency or the COVID response, either one of those.
Do we want to get more than, make them get
I
one
think
more
we
than
need
one?
more than one estimate myself.
Yeah.
Sometimes that friend of a friend of a friend, that's,
Come back to bite you.
and, exactly, that's a good way to put it, come back to bite you. Okay, now we're ready for the motion.
I'll make one, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
You ready?
Second.
Sure.
I make a motion that we have a do not exceed $50,000 budget to repair the Burnt Chimney Volunteer Fire Department's parking lot and to use that $50,000 out of the COVID response contingency fund.
I'll second the motion.
Madam Clerk, we do a roll call vote on that, please. You're authorizing staff to go into negotiations.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Supervisor Mike Carter is absent for the vote. Supervisor Janet Mitchell,
Yes.
Supervisor Ronald Mitchell,
Yes.
Supervisor Smith,
Yes.
Supervisor Tatum,
Yes.
Supervisor Cundiff is absent for the vote. Chairman Thompson,
Yes. All right, matter passed. Thank you all. Thank you. Thank you. All right, I know I'm gonna booger this up, but I'm gonna take a stab at it. Richard Skolman, he's with Bright Speed and CenturyLink Updates. Steve Sandy is going to do an introduction and bring him forward.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. I know several of you get feedback time to time from some CenturyLink, from citizens that have CenturyLink, and some of the concerns they expressed with some of the services that they've had, particularly in Snow Creek and Callaway, I think are kind of two of the areas that have had some issues in the past. And so we've had conversations with CenturyLink, who is now Brightspeed, and so they're in a bit of a transition period, changing over to new ownership, and with that comes some improvements that'll be part of that process. And the State Corporation Commission is involved, and so we've got Richard Schulman here today representing Brightspeed. Richard is very new to this position, I think less than 2 weeks. But not a stranger to CenturyLink. He used to work for CenturyLink in the past, and then he was executive director of the Broadband Industry Association prior to accepting this position here recently. And so now he's the Virginia Government Affairs representative for Brightspeed. And so we've had several conversations, and since he has this new position, he was able to come, and Steve Brewer, who is another CenturyLink representative, couldn't be with us today, but Richard is here, and Richard's going to share some of the information about what to look for with Brightspeed and some of the things that are coming with that company and that organization across really the state and maybe even the country relative to the new transition from CenturyLink to Brightspeed. So just wanted to give a bit of an introduction so folks would know kind of the what Richard is doing here, and then kind of the role he plays. And then I think there'll be opportunity for any questions that you may have moving forward. And then we'll continue to work with Richard through the process as they go through this transition as well. So Richard, welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. And Ms. Mitchell, I'm going to be careful as I'm talking, make sure move my eyes down here for you as well.
How bad did I booger up your name, sir?
Yeah, well, it wasn't too bad. It really wasn't too bad.
I apologize.
Not at all.
It was Mr. Tatum's fault, though, because I asked him what it was and he told me.
So I thought, first of all, thanks for allowing me to spend some time to talk with you today. I thought I'd do just a couple of things, tell you a little bit about me, a little bit about Brightspeed, fiber plans, but probably most important to you here today is copper network improvements. I think that's probably one of the key areas for you and for a lot, and as I'll mention, for a lot of Brightspeed areas. Just to kind of level set, in Franklin County, Brightspeed serves about 6,000 broadband customers. Those are on DSL lines, and about 1,000 voice customers in the county. My background, I'm on day 7, but as you can tell, I'm not really a youngster. I did a career, had a career in the Marine Corps before moving into the telecom world about 20 years ago, hard to believe. And I had 15 years working with initially Sprint, which became Embark, which became CenturyLink, which became Lumen, which is now becoming Brightspeed. So I think I got that right. I retired about 2 years ago. I took over running the State Association of the Smaller Telecom Companies and kind of kept me in the game with things like broadband grants, and I serve with Mr. Sandy on the Governor's Broadband Advisory Council still as well. I got a call a few months ago about coming back and working for Brightspeed, and what really interested me was that the company has a different philosophy about providing service and providing good customer service. To be very honest with you, I spent 15 years with the company. I had no desire to come back and bang my head against a wall with the situation that I saw as we were at the end when I left in 2020. This is a new company that has a completely different company that has bought the assets that were the CenturyLink Lumen assets and has a whole different philosophy. So for example, when I left and retired, I was responsible for 12 states from South Carolina to Maine and spent a lot of time in places like Albany. And when they said, look, we want you to come back, but we want you just in Virginia, and we want you working with local government and state government folks only in Virginia, which was attractive to me. If you're going to give us the tools to do the job and make it, make it reasonable to make some progress, then I was interested in coming back. So just a couple of weeks ago, October 3rd, Brightspeed announced that it had begun operations as this new company. We acquired the operations from 20 states from Lumen. And the company that did the acquisition was called Apollo Managed Funds, a venture capital firm, very different way of operating. It affects about 6.5 million homes across those 20 states and homes and businesses. The team really is dedicated to providing better customer service and with the goal of having really good customer service. And that's, again, what I said was interesting to me, and that's both for the copper customers and the fiber customers. The company announced immediately that we were hiring a 35% increase in the customer service support teams, which I thought was pretty good. And the fact that they were willing to bring me back just to do Virginia, I thought was a good sign of how serious the company is about doing something. On the fiber side, and then I'll come back to the copper because I want to spend a little more time on the copper, at least on the fiber side, just quickly mentioning that we plan to have 60,000 fiber passings by the end of next year and add another 70,000 over the coming years. And that's using our own money, not grant money. Those are projects that we would do on our own. At the same time, we will still be participating in the public-private partnership grant programs. I did some of the original VATI grants for CenturyLink back a few years ago. We're completing some of our projects right now, and we've got one application right now that's pending in Rockbridge County. Not quite as big as the one that you all have in the works with Chantel, but still a fairly good-sized one. And although the funding isn't what it was last year this time around, as I'm sure you all know, with this new federal BEAD money coming in, there's going to be a very big pool of money that's going to be available for future grants that we need to do. So again, as much as I like talking about fiber, I've been around Virginia long enough to know that many of our citizens still rely heavily on that copper network for access to 911, especially folks that don't have reliable cell phone service where they are. I live in Richmond, or just outside of Richmond, and my phone could be out for weeks and I wouldn't know, and I probably wouldn't even care because the robocallers wouldn't be calling me. But if my broadband went down, it'd be a whole different story. That's in Richmond, and that's in places that have fiber. But for most places that we serve are rural places and places that don't have that option, and they really do rely on that copper network to call 911 and to just basically to communicate. So we know that that is just crucial for the company. And that is one of the areas where we're going to be concentrating, is doing better on the copper service. It's not going to happen overnight, but we are doing, I mean, I've been here 7 days and I'm already working on lots of projects to make that happen. Mr. Sandy mentioned the State Corporation Commission. So when the deal was done, you all participated in that proceeding, filed comments in there, kind of setting a place marker down that upgrades to the system ought to be included in the process. And you weren't the only one. There were a number of other counties and lots of other citizens that weighed in and said the same thing. So then CenturyLink Lumen worked a stipulation with the State Corporation Commission that's kicking in now that the close has happened. And we made the commitment to evaluate and prioritize those copper network improvements. And there's a laundry list that I won't go through of reports that we have to do going forward on things like service quality metrics and out of service requirements. But one of the things that we are going to be doing is we're required within 90 days to submit a report with measurable and verifiable commitments regarding the plans for the maintenance, repair, and replacement of the copper network. As I said, that first report's due in January, and I'm already beginning to work on that, identify those areas where we need to be focusing our attention. And I know very well that we talked about some of the areas. Callaway was another one where we've got some issues here in the county. And I've told Mr. Sandy that I will work with him to be sure that you all are at that table as those discussions are happening, to be sure that we are looking at focusing on those areas in Franklin County that have the issues for this work. I also, as I was driving down here today, I checked in with our local service technicians, who I was happy to say they said there were no outage reports today, and they also said that we seem to have a very low trouble ticket count right now, which is always good news to hear. They did also ask that I share, and I don't know if this goes in the minutes, but we've got a new repair center call number that we want to make sure that citizens are aware of. And I'll just say it here it's 833-692-7773. Again, 833-692-7773. And that's the new repair number for any issues that come up. At the same time, I know Mr. Sandy gets some of those calls directly to him, and we have a team of folks who specifically are dedicated to working with local government officials on specific customer complaints. And I think we've got a pretty good reputation of working well to address those. And now you've got additional person in me to help in that process as well. In closing, I would just say talk is cheap, but it's going to be the actions that you all are going to be looking at. And that's what I'm here to tell you. I'm probably going to be making the rounds to a lot of the service areas and the boards of supervisors, and I'm not going to be absent. I will be back and have an opportunity to say that we're standing behind our words, and we've really done a lot better. And that's the message that, the reason I came out of retirement was to be able to come back and give that message, and I'm sticking to that. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anybody got any questions? Thank you, sir. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll take a 10-minute break. Well, we're right on schedule.
We are.
He's good, dude.
Well, we got a form now, we got four.
Yeah. Okay, you did go ahead. He'll be
All right,
ready.
Ms. Lisa, you go ahead. Ms. Cooper.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. I have 2 items on the agenda. The first one I want to talk about is a public hearing that would like to withdraw. If you remember, last month, you held a public hearing for a self-storage facility on Scruggs Road.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
A 2-hour meeting.
Yes, it was a long meeting, had a lot of speakers. So you're very familiar with this, so I'll go through this very quickly. It was over 16 acres, located on Scruggs Road. It's a vacant piece of property. If you remember, Scruggs Road is to the north. The county's operated collection site is on the corner of Scruggs Road and Lovely Valley Road to the east. And then Montgomery Farm subdivision was to the west, southwest. So September 13th, 2022, your planning commission held a public hearing for a special use permit. They recommended approval for this special use permit with 16 conditions, and there were 12 citizens who spoke against the request. This was an application that was being fast-tracked, which is the other item on our topic today. So on September 20th, you held your public hearing for the special use permit. You had 11 citizens that spoke against the request and 1 that spoke for it. That evening, if you remember, the Board of Supervisors received quite a few new documents, a concept plan. There was some renderings. There was a lot of discussion about a report for self-storage. There was also information about maybe changing some of the conditions, and the Board of Supervisors at that time decided that they wanted to table the request, close the public hearing, table the request to this month to give you time to review it. However, on October 5th, Jessica and Michael James decided to withdraw their application for a self-storage facility, so they withdrew. They're asking to withdraw the application. I wish I could tell you a reason why. I am not sure. I can only assume different reasons of why they might have pulled it. So basically, since they have withdrawn, the Board of Supervisors needs to take action for the request since the withdrawal was made after the public hearing. So staff's here to see if you accept the withdrawal.
I've got a couple questions in regards to this.
Yes.
When I read this, it bothered me. You know, I'm just can talk to myself, not the rest of the supervisors. You know, I thought this was a good thing and was in favor of it. And it was fast-tracked. It was fast-tracked. There was a public hearing that planning and zoning, and there was money that was spent for newspaper and everything because it has to be advertised. And then there was money spent for the advertising when they had the public hearing for the Board of Supervisors. I understood, I did the research, and it was nearly a 2-hour meeting in planning and zoning, and our meeting was 2 hours.
Yes, sir.
And now it all wants to be, who's going to pay for all this?
Well, I do know that the legal ads for the Planning Commission and the Board of Supervisors, the applicant is told up front that they're responsible for those, and I did not check before I came in here, but I know they did pay for the Planning Commission. I'm not sure about the board. I'm not sure if we've gotten the bill yet, but they will be responsible of paying for the legal ad.
All right, I'll entertain a motion, or has anybody else got any questions or comments? This is,
This is not the first time we've had applicants pull.
this was, it was fast track for crying out loud.
Well, and that's why Lisa's going to talk about the next item, which is full of problems. I'll give you a motion, Mr. Chairman, if you're ready.
I'm ready.
I would make a motion that the Board of Supervisors receive and accept the withdrawal by Mr. and Mrs.
James?
James, thank you, for the special use permit application on Scruggs Road for the storage unit project.
Second.
With the, do
You
a
want
addition
to,
to that, make sure it's paid for,
okay.
or they're supposed to pay that money for that. We can do that, can't we?
For the board or just the planning commission?
Both.
Okay,
Any expenses that have been incurred by the county,
okay, for processing, right?
yes.
Okay, so may I just restate the motion?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I would make a motion that the Board of Supervisors be in receipt of the withdrawal of application, and that we approve that withdrawal for the special use permit app for the storage project on Scruggs Road, and that the applicant be required to remit payment for all of the incurred county expenses.
Second.
And we got a second. And I understand that this cannot come back for 12 months, correct?
Only if you deny it.
Only if you deny it. But if they're withdrawal,
They're
only
not
if you.
coming back.
They're not coming back.
They're not gonna come back. I doubt it. Well, see, the thing with this application is that the owner of the property is not the applicant. Okay?
Okay.
Yes, the owner of the property is not the applicant. It was Mr. and Mrs. James that were going to purchase the property to construct the storage facility of the SUP.
So what they actually did, Mr. Chairman, is they pulled their contract to buy the property with Mr. Buck.
Okay. The reason I said that in the, in our summary, in section 4, the last sentence, it says that it cannot come back reconsidered within 12 months of the date of the action, unless the respective body approving withdrawal specifies the time limitation shall not apply. And you've tried to contact them, and they won't contact you back, correct?
Right, they have not
In
contacted
your papers here.
for us. We were trying to get some more information because we thought the Board of Supervisors might want to know why they were withdrawing. But we did not hear back.
Okay. We don't have to do a roll call vote on that because it doesn't do any money, so all in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed, same sign. Passed unanimously. Okay. And you want to talk about fast track policy?
Yes, if I could, please. And I just want to give a little bit of background up front. The public hearing policy, as many of you know, that the public notice requirements for land use decisions in the state of Virginia is done by the General Assembly. They give us they are the authority who defines the procedures of how we do land use decisions as local governments. You all are familiar with the Code of Virginia. The title that we fall under is 15.2, and this addresses procedures for counties, cities, and towns, and we shall follow these procedures. The sections that are important to the planning department when we are doing public hearings is sections 15.2, 2204, and 15.2, 2285. This outlines how public hearings and public notifications are done for the Planning Commission and Board of Supervisors public hearings. As you're well aware, the county can adopt a plan, an ordinance, or an amendment. The Code of Virginia in 2204 states that a public notice of intent has to be done once for 2 consecutive weeks in a newspaper that is published in general circulation. We usually use the Franklin News Post. In this notice, we have to notify the general public the time and place of the hearing. And we also have to note, the notice has to run not less than 5 days, not more than 21 days after the second advertisement appears in the paper. We also are required by the state to give written notice by the county or by the planning department at least 5 days before the hearing. We give this notice to the owners, any of their agents, adjoining property owners, which does people across the street that abut this property. We actually, on most cases, go a little bit further out notifying people, and we actually notify people at least 20 days to the public hearing to give them more time. And it kind of coincides with when the advertisement hits the paper. But that's just our planning department that decides to do it 20 days instead of 5 days before. The county also provides notice of public hearing by a sign. We post this sign at least 14 days prior to the public hearing, so that citizens, if they see it and they haven't received a letter because they don't live close to it, they have a number where they can call, or they can actually come here and speak at the public hearing. Also, Section 15.2, 2285, the General Assembly tells that the Planning Commission has to hold at least one public hearing on the proposed ordinance, amendment, whatever change that's being made, and they have to meet the requirements of that 15.2, 2204 that I was just talking about. The Planning Commission members, or the Planning Commission has 100 days to act on that decision. They also, the Planning Commission is required to send their approval or denial to the Board of Supervisors with any type of materials that will help you in making your decision. And then you, as the Board of Supervisors, you are required to have at least one public hearing, and we are also required to follow those requirements in 15.2, 2204. Just to tell you how we do it in our office, when somebody calls us to talk about either a special use permit or a rezoning, we do require some type of application review. We want to discuss them to make sure that we understand the project. We also, when the applicants submit for the public hearing request, our office takes this the first Monday of the month, which you can call month one, following the month of the Planning Commission public hearing. We also do a site visit, and the applicant is notified and can be on site when the Planning Commission is out there meeting, so that they can see where the special use permit or rezoning is taking place. That's the first Wednesday of the month, and it's a week before the Planning Commission public hearing. Planning Commission public hearings are the second Tuesday of the month, which would be month 2. And then the Board of Supervisors is the third Tuesday of the month, which would be month 3, and that's a month after the Planning Commission public hearing. Which brings us to the policy that we wanted to discuss today, and that's the fast tracking policy. This is a brief overview of what was in your executive summary. Some of you will recall in November of 2015, the Board of Supervisors was presented with a draft policy for fast tracking applications. This policy happened to be on the consent agenda and was approved. The policy was for rezoning and special use permits. Upon completion of the application, the zoning administrator will provide the notices, and we meet all the notices of the 2204 and 2205 that we're required to. This was in the policy that was presented to you all. Also, the zoning administrator was required to schedule the public hearings in accordance to the 2285 that we just discussed. One of the other things, the Board of Supervisors has a right to expedite a petition in the same month as the Planning Commission if one or more of the following is met, and the project is critical to securing and enhancing economic development for the county. The project serves as a critical public health, safety, or welfare need or requirement, or the project is necessary for the county to comply with state or federal laws or grant requirements. Planning staff, since some of the fast tracking had been picking up, has met with other staff members with the county. When we review these from now on, we will definitely be looking at the application and the policy and guidelines and getting information from the Economic Development Office and other agencies before we ever bring the request to the Board of Supervisors. But we also wanted you to know, which you probably already know, is that the Economic Development Department will be developing an economic development plan later this year. And staff will be reviewing this policy with the consultants to consider amendments to the policy or to develop more defined criteria for staff to be more objective when we're doing an application that could be fast-tracked. Also, in this development plan, we are going to do a review of, it will include permitting approval process for site plans, stormwater, and building approvals. I would be glad to answer any questions, and Mr. Sandy will be glad to help me if I cannot answer one of the questions.
Will you please go back one slide?
Sure.
After looking this over again, I'm not sure the Board of Supervisors has the right to expedite petition in the same month as the Planning Commission is on one or more of the following three conditions as are satisfied. I'm not sure that number one is germane to this policy. 2 and 3 probably, but after thinking about it, and that would be my comment there. After thinking about the fast tracking, I'm not really sure. There's lots of factors to be involved there, and there's a lot of cost involved. I mean, this last thing, that was 4 hours of public hearings, and that doesn't include what was done behind the scenes before it ever got to us. And when it's fast tracked, when they do theirs on Tuesday, and then the next Tuesday, we have our meeting, and that means they only have 1 day, because all of that's got to get to staff on Wednesday, because we get our books on Thursday. Right? And that really, Madam Clerk, is that pretty much the way that goes? You just
Yes.
got 1 day to get all of that together?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
Yeah, go
Ma'am.
ahead, sure.
One thing that I think needs to happen, and I'm sure you guys are already all over this, we need to make sure that if there's any inference for economic development consideration, that our economic development director is part of that discussion. If it's part, if there is a critical public health or safety issue, that our director of public safety is involved. And then whomever it would be for the third. But my point is we need criteria. These are very subjective. And it leaves, and I know that typically policies, state code and all has a generality of being somewhat vague in places to give latitude. But I think in terms of, I think the Board of Supervisors would be in a more firm position if there were criteria that staff evaluated with the application request. And only if the application meets those criteria should it be forwarded on, as such to the Planning Commission and to the Board of Supervisors. My concern, since I've been elected, is, we've got a draft policy or at least some language in our board supervisor book I was given when I got elected that talks about fast tracking just relative to economic development. And I don't think anybody in economic development has participated in that. And that, if we're going to do this, and I'm sure other localities have a policy as well, I think we would be well, placed to see what other localities are doing with fast tracking, if we don't have to reinvent the wheel. But I would like for the board to be in a better place of evaluation of these requests, by criteria being set and by them being vetted by staff.
I think you're, Mrs. Smith, I think you're exactly right. I mean, it is hard, especially on staff. I mean, it comes to planning staff first. This is what we have. We're trying to make a determination. And planning staff and some other staff, including economic development and county admin, have met. And that's why until this study that's being done for economic development is finished, before we would bring anything to you all as a board, we will be discussing it with economic development, county administration, fire EMS, whatever the criteria is, we'll be discussing it with everybody before we ever bring it to you all. And there is a possibility that it may not get here to you.
Ms. Cooper,
Oh, I'm sorry. I was just going to suggest, Mr. Chairman, the board may want to consider putting a pause on any further request for fast tracking until we get a report.
I was gonna
That
suggest
would be fine with staff.
Ms.
Because it's a
Cooper,
lot of work. When we fast track something, it is a lot of work behind the scenes. And you saw what happens. Renderings come in, concept plans come in late, whereas we don't have that month.
Ms. Cooper, why was it fast-tracked in this last one?
It was,
Of these three criteria right here that you went by, why was it fast-tracked?
we brought it to you under the economic development. It was requested. It was requested by the applicant for us to bring it to you
What
under.
was critical to securing and enhancing an economic development project?
I might have the paperwork here. It had something to do, I remember, with people needing storage facilities while they were, either to help their business because they didn't have a place to store their commercial vehicles, I think was one of the reasons.
Mr. Chairman, they evaluated a lack of capacity, and the other piece of it was that because of the inflationary pressures, the excavator.
What I understood to say
Yeah,
it was
yeah.
because of price, how
Yeah.
things were changing with the price. That's not really part of those three criteria there.
Right,
Ms. Mitchell,
and
you got any comments or questions or anything?
My only comment is it was quite an experience for my first meeting to sit here for that time and hear.
Welcome to the show, Ms. Mitchell.
I will, anybody else got anything? I'll entertain the motion then.
I'll go with whatever y'all want to do.
That, Ms. Smith, the motion that you were gonna make to stop no more until.
Okay.
Policy, sure, let's do it.
Happy to, Mr. Chairman. I would make a motion that the Board of Supervisors put a pause on receiving any further requests for fast tracking through our economic development and/or planning departments until such time as reports are brought forward from staff.
Till there. Got a second?
Second.
Madam Clerk, you want a roll call on that, or can we just do a voice vote?
We can just do a voice vote.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. It passed.
Thank you, Lisa.
thank you.
Thanks.
And,
Ms. Cooper. All right. Ms. Sims, Beth Sims, Director of Economic. We've got a potential for a grant. In your back, Richard.
Maddie, how do I get out of this? I'm sorry.
yeah,
You can't,
I can do it from here.
okay. Thank you. We can't get to the X on our screen.
Uh-oh,
Sorry.
can't work.
There you
You
go.
don't have the computer working, huh?
I'm definitely challenged when it comes to that.
There we go. Okay, so we have two agenda items for you today, both concerning our friends at the Tobacco Commission. So the first one is relatively straightforward and simple. It's accepting of the grant that we were awarded back in May. And so this, just so y'all could see it in front of y'all, I just did a couple slides on this. This is the estimated cost for the Dogwood site grading that now we're on our third grant application for. So you see there, the total estimated cost is right at $5 million. We have some hope that it may come in a little bit lower than that. The engineer that's working on it said they're not sure if it will come up to that. So we've got our fingers crossed that it'll come in a little bit under, but this is the quote we were given a couple years ago. And then this shows the timeline of and kind of money grant process for this specific project. So like I said, we applied for that full amount last year. We were awarded just over $1 million from Virginia's Economic Development, Virginia Business Ready Site program. So then we applied, we talked to the Tobacco Commission, and they advised us that applying for about 1.5 million would be feasible to them. So we applied for that sometime in the winter of last year, and then was awarded in May. So what I'm asking you today is to accept that funding, but then as a follow-up, we've applied for the remaining amount from the Virginia Business Ready Site program again this year. So last year when that program came out, it had a total of $7 million budgeted for the whole state. And I can't remember, I want to say they awarded about 12 or 13 projects. Us, Pennsylvania County, and Henry County got the largest awards. But this year they have the biannual budget was $150 million total. So between this year and next year, they're supposed to be awarding up to $150 million in grant funds. So we went ahead and applied for the remaining amount of this. And we've made it to the second round of that process, and we have a virtual tour coming up this Friday with the consultant for that grant program to hopefully get the whole thing funded. But if we don't get it funded, the way we're doing the engineering is to just do grading of half the site. Because any progress is going to help when it comes to talking and meeting with prospects. So once again, just wanted to reiterate, we're not asking for any additional local money for this project. The local money that's already been invested we're using as match, which is good. We don't have to come up with any extra match right now. And so that's kind of how that all works out. So right now, we're working on grading half of it, and then hopefully we'll get to finish the other half. And then this is just a little update from the engineer that I got yesterday. It said they have wrapped up analysis of the site, and then we're going to be meeting next week to figure out, moving forward what the engineering is going to look like. Anybody have any questions about that?
Questions or comments, anyone?
I have a quick question, Mr. Chairman. I'm on a roll today, I'm sorry. Beth, the budget, can you put the budget slide back up there, please?
I hope so. Wait a second.
Oh, if you can't,
No.
that's okay.
Arrow up.
Beth, don't worry about it. I can answer my question.
Oh, sorry. Wait a second. Thank you, Steve.
Okay, so this $4.9 million is project total for grading.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, is there a contingency budgeted?
That's 10%.
Is that the
It's
10% that's
yeah.
in there?
Yeah.
Okay, all right, because it said construction costs, and I wasn't sure if that was contingency. So, if this number today, this is an older number, right? Mm-hmm. So we would expect it to definitely be increased.
Well, it's a different engineer. So the Timmons Group is the one who gave us this, and we're using a local engineer, or local-ish, out of Botetourt now for this, and they kind of made it sound like they think it could be done at less. Like I said, I'm
really?
not getting my hopes up.
Okay.
But they've kind of, that's why they kind of analyzed the site first before they dove into the engineering.
Okay, thank you. Thank
So, fingers crossed.
Any more questions? Anybody? All right, so we've got to make action on whether or not we want to accept this tobacco revitalization grant that's taken and to go forward. Need a motion.
Okay. I make a motion to authorize staff to sign and execute all documents necessary for the acceptance of the above described Virginia Tobacco Region Revitalization Commission, Southern Virginia program grant for the business site pad grading.
Second?
Second.
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 I got a motion and a second. We don't need to do a roll call on this, I'm told, so all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. All right,
Thank you.
it's gone forward.
All right. Are we good with that
You
one?
got another one on here, or was that the same?
No, there's another
Oh.
motion for applying for the grant.
Oh, I'm sorry. That's a different one. Okay. So we're done with Summit View right now. Now on to another realm of economic development. So this is a historic picture I got from the Historic Society, 40 West Church Street, which is a county-owned building located behind the Farmers Market in downtown Rocky Mount. We had a feasibility study done last year on this site to look at, the idea actually came about in March of 2020, but we all know what happened in March of 2020, to try to convert this building into a co-work space. Remote work has been on the rise before COVID, and then we know what happened during COVID and after COVID. Remote work is going to, at least some type of hybrid remote work. There's a statistic on here, 85% of work is going to have some remote component involved in it coming up in the future. Also, United States currently has 50 million independent workers. It's projected to be 100 million independent workers by the year of 2030. So, like I said, this idea came about in March of 2020. We had a feasibility study done last year, about a year ago, where we had a lady come in and look at, is there a need for co-work small office space in Rocky Mount and Franklin County? The results of that came back positively. We've been kind of sitting on this and waiting. We had some other grants and projects we needed to work on, such as Summit View and different, did I cut out? There we go. And so, anyways, a few weeks ago, Tobacco Commission reached out and said, so the Tobacco Commission has funded a couple of these projects now, most recently in Patrick County, and they kind of said, hey, if you want to apply for funding, and we've looked at other avenues. We've looked at Go Virginia, we've looked at other things, and just haven't really been able to find a fit. But Tobacco Commission reached out about 3 or 4 weeks ago now, was just like, hey, it might be a good time. This cycle might be a good cycle to apply for this grant. They have $31 million in their budget for this grant cycle. And so anyways, we met with them, I guess 2 Mondays ago now, and they advised that it might be a good time to apply. And so I included some information in your packet. Like I said, this is the building. There's not a lot of historic buildings left. It's kind of sad. And the ones that are left haven't necessarily been taken care of when they've been renovated. So that's one thing, that's a positive if we were to do this, is we're preserving that historic building. It's a contributing building in the historic district. This shows the outlay of it. It's been used for office space before. Originally it was like a John Deere kind of dealership. Now, most recently it was, the developmental center, and then it was used for some incubation when I guess a company out of Germany was looking at locating here. And then now it's partially leased to Piedmont Community Services, and then I'd say about 2/3 of it are vacant. And so it's had that use before. When the lady did the feasibility study, she looked at a couple other uses and said that an office type space would be the best use. This shows this is just two kind of sentences I pulled out of the grant to show that we think it's a good fit. The grant program encourages the occupancy of underutilized buildings and the creation and expansion of technology and business service sector jobs. The service sector is probably the fastest growing sector in our economy right now. And we all the time I get calls for, a new financial advisor needing an office, or a new insurance agent needing an office, and so forth. So anyways, development, and then also development of shared workspaces focused on businesses which produce services, once again, are a priority. So this is why we think this project fits into this grant program. And then this just kind of shows, like I said, I know it may seem like this came out of nowhere, but we've been researching this for 2.5 years. And we visited the one in South Boston. They recently opened one. We visited the one in Blacksburg. We've been on the phone with the guy from Danville. So we've done some research into this, and these are just some points of why we think it's a good fit for Franklin County. One of the biggest things is and what the Tobacco Commission really liked was the person, the people aspect. We don't really have a place right now for entrepreneurs to go and to network and to bounce their ideas off of each other and to build their business. And that's one thing. Talking to the one in Blacksburg, they said they had a lawyer as a member, and then they had this guy who owned a restaurant, and he couldn't get work done in his restaurant, so he rented a little space. And these two guys got to talking, and then he ended up expanding and buying another restaurant just because he was able to kind of talk to this lawyer who was in the same space as him. So that's the biggest thing, is it just kind of organically happens that businesses are able to succeed and to grow. A couple of things, like I said, 85% of the workforce we were doing remote, innovation hubs, and then also, we're an aging, all rural areas across the country, it's not specific to Franklin County, have aging populations. And we do not, the region as a whole does a decent job of keeping young people, but we do have some leaving, and then what we're missing is the new ones coming in. Urban areas automatically have young people move in. People automatically move to Richmond or Charlotte or DC right out of college. We have to work a little harder to get them to do that. So we're hoping this will help with that. And then also there's just a lack of office space. Like I said, we get calls all the time of people who are looking for office space, and the only thing that is available is 2,000, 3,000 square feet or more, and rents of $4,000 a month. If you're a startup service business, that's pretty much impossible. So that just pulled out a few key points for that. The business model would be what we've talked to, that would be the most revenue generating and just kind of the most sought after, is about 70% dedicated office space. So those will be, leased office spaces that would generate revenue, 20% open desk space, and then 10% common space. And then once again, the revenue will be generated by leasing those offices, memberships, flex space rentals. We talked about the potential of sponsorships. We have a lot of businesses around here who want to help their community. And so, I've kind of talked, nothing official, but just like, hey, if there was a sponsorship opportunity for a co-work space, would you be interested? And quite a few of our businesses have said, yeah, we'd be interested. And then, of course, we would work with partners. We already have the partnership with the Small Business Development Center, with Ferrum College. We are served by the Roanoke-Blacksburg Technology Council. Once again, we haven't been able to engage with them as much just because Franklin County is a little bit different than, kids graduating from Blacksburg and starting a tech business. But you never know. We are served by them and we work with them. So that would be a big part of it is the partnerships. And then, like I said, I just put a couple of pictures on here of examples, successful examples. This is the one in South Boston. Me and Amy went and visited about 2 months ago. And then this is the one in Blacksburg. And there's a lot. We're not going to have to reinvent the wheel. There's successful models that are comparable to our population in Franklin County. So we won't have to if we apply for the grant, if we get the grant funding, we won't have to reinvent the wheel. So I guess that's about all I've got. If y'all have any questions.
Is this grant all-inclusive, or is it a match grant?
It is a matching grant. So the Tobacco Commission does a 1-for-1 match. We do not have I was hoping to have the quote back from the architect. I do not have that yet. But in the meantime, while I was waiting on his quote, we've reached out to the federal, West Piedmont worked with us on reaching out to the federal EDA. They do matching funds. They were the ones who did the matching funds for the Patrick County project just last year. Also, where it's a historic property, we could possibly get historic tax credits. So we've spent some money recently on updating the building. The money we spend on the Small Business Development Center advisor, all that can count as match. So we're trying to come together, and like I said, I know this is a little bit premature, and I wish I had better numbers for y'all. What I'm really asking for is the grant is due Friday, so I'm asking to apply for the grant. We won't know an award of a grant until January, and then even after that, we have 12 12 months to secure the matching funds. And I've spoke to Chris, and I'll tell y'all here, you know, if it gets to the point where this is just going to be cost prohibitive, we could always pull the grant application, or we could just, you know, turn it down. So there is more work to be done on that side of it. But conceptually, we think we've got a good application.
Any more questions?
Beth, you touched on it slightly. With this being a historically designated building, I would assume that DHCD monies, Department of Housing Community Development, I would assume that we could enter into a tax credit program to pull some money down on that building.
Right, and they were the ones who actually, I'm glad you said that, Ms. Smith. They were the ones who funded the feasibility study. So no local money has been put into this at all. Even last year, when we first started this, that was $25,000 of DHCD money that did the feasibility study for it.
Well, and I just, in closing my remarks, I applaud you and Amy for thinking forward and thinking in a progressive way to move our business environment to a higher level of functioning, because our business environment has changed dramatically in the last 2.5 years. And I love this because it's responsive to what we need to do to be in the new, what I refer to as a new business environment. And I think that we've got all of the right components for this to be successful. So thank you all for thinking ahead and being innovative in your approaches.
Yeah, and thank you. And we've also, not to get too ahead of ourselves or to get our hopes up, but we've also identified 2 other locations in the county. We're hoping to use this one as kind of a flagship example, and say it's successful. We've identified 2 other kind of more dense pop areas in the county that have vacant spaces right now that could facilitate something like this. So we're hoping that this would be example, and maybe 2 years from now, we open up a second location, and then 2 years down the road, open up a third location. You know, I don't know if y'all talked to people who've been working fully remote for the last 2.5 years, but they're getting tired. They need to get out and they need to see people. Yeah.
All right.
I just have a comment. I absolutely love this idea. If this would have been in place earlier this year, I would have rented a spot just to get the office out of my home. You know, I need to be at home with the family, but I have to find myself working at home because my office is in my home. This is a great idea. There's tons of people like myself that need a workspace in town, close to everything, and I would love to see this move forward. It's a great idea.
Thank you.
I understand that staff has talked to Rocky Mount,
Yes, sir.
and the town manager's here. Mr. Wood, Robert, you want to address this any? You got anything to say about it? I understand you like the concept.
Thank you very much.
Come on up. Nobody's going to bite you. You see, I'm paying back from the other down in Norfolk.
Fair enough, fair enough,
Okay.
fair enough. Well, I was just here to observe, but yes, I think this is a good project. Beth mentioned that there had been a feasibility study done by the town at one point, and there was some transition there, but it kind of makes sense that the county's applying since it is your building, and so that makes sense to do that. But I do think it would be beneficial for the community for sure.
Okay, and I know that the town had some interest in some steps or something,
Yes, sir.
and is that still there?
We just got the survey done so that we can actually have our engineer look at it and see what the possibilities are for what could be done there. I think that the survey came in 3 or 4 days ago, so we're just barely kind of starting to look at that and see what might happen. But yes, there's still interest there.
Good.
Okay,
Keep us posted.
thank you.
Thanks for being here today.
Thanks, Robert.
Thanks, Robert.
Any more questions or comments, or up to the board now? What's the board want to do? Somebody want to make a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Oh, okay, Ms. Mitchell.
I make a motion to authorize staff to make application to the Virginia Tobacco Region Revitalization Commission Southern Virginia Program Grant for creation of a co-work business development center at 40 West Church Street, Rocky Mount, and authorize county staff to execute any documents necessary.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Motion carried.
Thank you very much, and I'll keep y'all updated.
Thank you.
Thank you, Beth.
Thank you, ma'am. All right, boys here, let's go ahead and do that before we go into break. Since we've got, Mr. McAvoy here with, you want to go ahead and call, Mr. Cundiff so that he can get in while he's coming up. Steve, you gonna do an introduction or get him ready for the podium? It's good to have you with us here today, Mike.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
And I understand you got some good news.
Yes.
Good.
Depends on your view, point of view.
Mr. Chairman, why Mr. McAvoy's coming to the podium. Of course, Scott Kroll, also with the Western Virginia Water Authority, is with us. Appreciate these two gentlemen so much. As you all know, the Western Virginia Water Authority is a significant partner with Franklin County, and this board worked diligently and strategically this last year to set aside a significant amount of dollars to go towards water and sewer infrastructure, most notably a water system in the Union Hall area, both a water tank,
Tommy,
a water
can you hear me?
treatment, well as, I hear Mr. Cundiff. Mr. Cundiff, can you hear us? Mr. Cundiff, can you hear us?
I lost him. Let me try to get him back.
Okay. And so, Mr. Chairman, with the Union Hall system there, and then also looking at our needs, we know we have water needs certainly in that Union Hall, South Lake area, but we also have sewer, continued sewer needs.
Your call cannot be completed as dialed.
In the Westlake area, specifically a lift station. And so I know this board appropriated $3.2 million to set aside for those capital infrastructure investments for the growth that we are now seeing at South Lake and Union Hall, as well as in Westlake. And so Mr. McAvoy contacted our office last week, and we shared with the board in your weekly packet an update as to some of the water and sewer planning over the last week, and I think we've provided that you all to the board. And so we've asked the authority to be with us today to update us on those infrastructure developments, as well as to note, we do know, just like with anything, we know the pricing of steel and so forth has increased. While that is a challenge, the good news is we've reviewed the budget, the 3.2 that's set aside on the county side, and this is a one-to-one leverage match. If you all recall, we were very fortunate in our partner with the Water Authority. Appreciate you, Mr. McAvoy, Shirley Holland, who is the chair of the Western Virginia Water Authority, also a Franklin County resident. Appreciate all your board, Mr. McAvoy, does for Franklin County. And so we thought it'd be very beneficial. He had some time this afternoon to update us, Mr. Chairman. That's a long-winded way. Okay, we're now saying we have Mr. Cundiff on the line, so I'm going to cut.
We do not.
We do not. Okay, we'll have to catch him later.
We got to go to break so we can get staff in here to work on this. So we're going to take, sorry, but what we're trying to do, Mike, is one of our board members is going to join your presentation.
Okay.
He's going to join us on the phone, and it's going to take about 5 minutes to get it hooked up because we got to get staff in here to do something
Okay, that's fine.
with their crystal ball.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, do we need a motion to spend some money on making it easier to have supervisors phone?
We don't spend how much money.
Whatever we did, it didn't work.
It didn't work, did it?
No, sir.
We'll take a 5-minute break until they get it going.
Tommy?
Yes,
Okay, we're back in session.
good. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Well, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, thank you for making time on your agenda today. I know it was a little bit different, but I do want to give you an update on some of the projects we have going on in the county. Talk about a few of them, and then Scott Kroll is going to come up and talk about the two more active ones, including the South Lake project. And Chris had given you a little bit of an overview, but we'll give you a few more details of what's going on all these projects. I'm going to start with wastewater. We've been looking at the Westlake area for the last year, trying to determine another location for a lift station. I think you all know we have two standalone water or wastewater systems serving the commercial areas in the Westlake corridor along 122. We're currently discussing purchasing a private system as well, and those discussions are going well. We don't have a deal yet, but let you know those are ongoing, and I think we're getting close. We're going to do some survey work, so that's looking promising. And then we have the former Lake Watch system and the former Westlake wastewater plant, and to get more flow to those plants, we need some lift stations. 122 just happens to run along the ridge, running through that area. So it's kind of at the high point, and everything's falling off to either side. So there's only so much we can do with gravity sewer, and we'll have to pump. So we've identified a couple locations in the Westlake area to bring more wastewater flow to that plant, and that will help with development and also redevelopment of some of the existing buildings there. So we're excited about that, and we're trying to identify the property owners, make sure they understand what we're asking for. So we're working on those. So those are all in the works. And Mr. Whitlow had mentioned earlier that we do have some money set aside in the $3.2 million that you all had allocated for utility development for wastewater, and we've set aside some money as well. Again, our partnership here is a 1-for-1. So we think we have enough funding to build at least one lift station, maybe even two, which we'd like to do. With prices being up, we'll see. Hopefully we get at least the one in. So that's moving along. And then also wanted to let you know that we had finished the water main project on Grassy Hill Road. The Uttermost is working on some of their fire protection needs, and the only thing we have to do there is set a vault and connect them up for their fire system. They're having their engineers do some evaluations there, but that line is in service. And we've also started working on have a design finished that'll go down Jamestown Road. You all probably aware there's some homes there that are on wells that have had some petroleum contamination from a past gas station. DEQ is funding that project, and they've given us the kind of green light to proceed with that one. So we're just kind of in the final stages of getting that one out to bid. So we'll be doing an extension off of Grassy Hill down Jamestown and picking up a number of customers there. So excited about that project. So I'm going to bring Scott up. He's going to talk to you a little bit about some of the work we're doing on Scruggs Road, and then also about the South Lake project. He's the project manager for that. So Scott?
Thanks, Mike. Mr. Chairman, members of the board, staff, pleasure to be here. We did put a memo together and sent that over to staff earlier that I think was forwarded to you to kind of just summarize the status of the projects that we have going on in the county right now. The one I'll talk about first is the Scruggs Road Extension Project. That's a project that is moving along quite well. We broke ground and started work while the ink was still wet on our VDOT permit. So we finally got that in hand and started latter part of September. We've got just under 2,000 feet of pipe in the ground already. And that project is an extension of our Westlake water system down Scruggs Road. That existing water main from our main treatment plant that serves the Westlake area terminates at the Windmere subdivision, Windmere Trail. This project picks up from the end of that existing line and extends down to the Compass Cove subdivision, and then we'll go down Ashmead, and we have an agreement with the Bernard's Landing facility to provide bulk water connection for them, and they'll end up tying into our system once we get the line down Ashmead to the bulk meter station that we're going to build there at Sailors Cove Drive. So we've got a little bit more work to do. We're going to be replacing some of the piping within the Compass Cove subdivision, but all of the plans for the main along Scruggs and Ashmead are finished, and so we'll be continuing construction on that while we finalize the plans for tying in Compass Cove. And the ultimate goal for that, right now, Compass Cove is on a small independent community well system that we own and operate. And once we interconnect them, they'll be also tied into our main system. So if there aren't any questions about the Scruggs Road project, I'll kind of segue right into South Lake.
Any questions?
No, sir.
So we have made quite a bit of progress on South Lake. As you know, and I'm sure that Mr. Cundiff is very interested as well. These projects just don't happen overnight. There is quite a timeline on a lot of the pre-construction activities. So, we've been diligent in checking off the list. As you know, we had to acquire a parcel in order to have some property to build the facility. We completed that, and also we closed on the acquisition of that property. There were some land use restrictions on the deed that we had to go through some administrative process through the circuit court to have those removed, and that went extremely well. And so that cleared the way for us to acquire the property, and it's unencumbered for us to proceed with the project. Also, as you know, you all approved the special use permit and the comp plan review, so that's been checked off. We had our engineers prepare the required preliminary engineering report that kind of looks at a very high-level view of the proposed system and how it relates to the overall area that we're going to be serving. That was submitted to the health department and has been approved. The PER is the first step into VDH approval. Now that we have that, we'll also have to submit the final design documents to them for them to issue the permit to construct and operate the system. So we do have the PER approved, and that kind of sets the groundwork for the basis of design for the actual plans and specs for the system. So we've got that all done. We've done some additional testing. The system is going to utilize 2 existing groundwater wells that were installed by one of the adjacent property owners who happens to be a developer in the area. And we're working out an arrangement with him to acquire those wells and be able to utilize those as our water source for the new South Lake system. Those wells were installed a number of years ago, and we've since updated the well testing and just wanted to make sure that they were still as good or better than they were when they were installed. And I'm pleased to report that the testing results that we got back were very positive, so we're very happy with that. And the other status update is we completed the initial design for the storage tank, and we put that out to bid, and the bids closed on October 12th. Unfortunately, the pricing that came back on that was considerably higher than what we had anticipated, but as Mike mentioned, we think there's adequate funding in the overall project budget between the county's portion and the water authority's match that we'll be able to proceed with the project. We are still working on finalizing the design for the treatment system and all the piping and connecting the pumps and all of the metering and monitoring and all of the technical requirements for the water filtration system, the pumping system, and the distribution system. So that's well underway. We just received the 30% design submittal from our engineers. We're currently reviewing that, and we'll be providing comments back to them with the goal of having the design wrapped up in December and going out to bid sometime in December of this year. And then with that timeline, we'll hopefully be able to get bids on the treatment system and the piping and get started with construction right after the first of this year, or the first of next year. I guess the only other caveat that I would offer is that we don't have the treatment system out to bid yet, so that's still an unknown. With this market conditions in the construction industry now, you really don't know what something's going to cost until bid date. So we've updated our cost estimates and feel like we're in pretty good shape as far as our overall project budget. Let's see. I think, I did want to mention that there was a notation in the memo. We still need to work with staff to finalize exactly where we're going to put the distribution piping. If you recall, the way we've kind of structured the project is with the budget allocation that we have for the project, we'll have to build the tank, the treatment system, and connect the wells. Whatever budget funding is available after those expenses will go towards putting distribution main in. The initial plans we have now, I've outlined that in the memo. Once we get out to Route 40, right at about the intersection of Route 40 and Burger Loop, the plans right now call for extending the water main along Route 40 to the east to approximately where the Cattleman building is going to be. That's being redeveloped in that existing building. We're also planning on putting a crossing under Route 40 so we can get the water main onto the north side of Route 40 there at Burger Loop and stub that out for a future extension. And then we're also programming into the project, putting some main along Route 40 going to the west, about to the limits of the property that we acquired. And then, of course, we'll stub out there as well for a future connection to the west if that's needed in the future. So that kind of wraps up my my summary. I'll be happy to try to answer.
Anybody got any
questions.
questions?
I have one question, if I may. This is probably a dumb question, but this is infrastructure. With the wells and the tank, will fire suppression and hydrants be a part of the extensions that occur? Is there capacity for that?
Yes, we've included that in the design. The volume of fire flow that's available from a small system like this is not the same as if it was connected to our main treatment plant, but we are including fire protection. And right now, the modeling and the design work we're doing is based on a minimum of 500 gallons a minute of fire flow for the system. And typically what we would do is install hydrants, every 1,000 feet along a long water main and then at most major intersections.
Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm. And that's not a stupid question.
Anyone else?
So, Mr. Chairman, as Scott indicated, the tank prices did come in higher, and but it's still within the allocation that you had assigned to us for infrastructure development. What will happen is we'll be spending more money on the plant facilities, the tank and plant facilities, and less on distribution piping. So the piping that Scott outlined was kind of the minimum of the project. We really had hoped to take the balance of the 3.2 after we finished this project and what we needed for the wastewater lift station and just build more pipe with that. So we'll just have less money for pipe. That's really what's going to happen here. And we'll just have to program those kind of things out in future years and hopefully partner with you all on those. Just kind of two options here. We believe moving forward makes sense. The other option would be maybe delay and hope that, we could rebid the prices, delay 9 months or a year. But as I was telling Chris, the concern I have is that there's going to be a lot of local governments and states that'll be dumping quite a lot of their ARPA federal dollars into the market in 2023 and 2024 because the deadline to start allocating that money is 2024. So while the overall economy might be cooling a little bit by then, we actually see municipal construction going up even more. And so our specialty contractor, especially the tank contractor that bid this job, we've done a couple other tanks with this contractor. They did good work. Not sure about their availability if we wait a year. Even though it's more expensive, I think we'd like to move forward and go ahead and get the project underway.
I don't think do we need to do a motion on this, or?
I don't.
I think just
I think just a consensus to keep moving.
The board to move forward. Everybody's got their thumb up, Mr. Grundy. Do you concur? He's
Yes,
already gone.
That would be fine, just a consensus.
It's a consensus for the board to move forward.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
All right.
Did he answer? I asked him. Tommy, can you hear me?
Yes, yes, yes.
There's been a consensus of the board for them to go ahead and move forward. There's no vote needed, just a consensus. Are you in favor of it?
Okay.
Are you?
Well, 100%, yes, 100%.
All right, so it's 6, one's off today.
Great.
So.
Again,
yes,
thank you,
sir.
Mr. Chairman. And we'll be back probably after we get some bids in on the treatment plant. As Scott mentioned, that's our next major milestone, and we've actually timed there's some lead time on the tank, so we've actually timed those that the general contractor that'll be doing the treatment plant will start the grading work, and then the subcontractor that's doing the tank will come in and build their piece. So it's all integrated together, and I think it's probably the best decision can continue to move forward.
Thank you.
All right.
Thanks,
Appreciate it.
Mike.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, will you make sure that a copy of this memo goes into Mr. Carter and Mr. Cundiff's box?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
to be sure that I heard correctly, they'll be able to start on this the very first of next year?
First quarter of the year, yes.
Okay,
They're not giving the exact date, but in the first quarter.
right. Well, I really appreciate that, and I appreciate everybody's due diligence working on this, the Water Authority, the county. I really appreciate everything for South Lake.
Yes, sir. Enjoy your vacation.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye. All right, we got a work session, county administrator's report, county attorney's report, and then closed session. Mr. Whitlow, you want to go ahead and give us your report?
I can, Mr. Chairman, and then after that, if that works, if then the board wants to reconvene.
All right, you go ahead and
at
give us
7:05
yours.
for the.
Mr. Gwynn says he has nothing.
Okay.
So then we'll go in and do the work session for as long as we can, and
Sure.
then go into closed session back there.
Sure, you can do that, Mr. Chairman. Members of the board, several upcoming events I would share and just point out. Of course, this Saturday is the annual Ferrum Folklife Festival, which draws thousands of attendees really from around the United States. It's I had some out-of-town visitors recently visit with me who had attended, and I won't say which other locality, had a folk festival, a very large urban area in the Mid-Atlantic region. And they were sharing with me they were quite disappointed in terms of it had lost its authenticity. And so they plan to come back to Virginia next year for the Ferrum Folklife Festival, full well knowing that it truly is very authentic, one of the most authentic Blue Ridge Folklife Festival, and the folks down at Ferrum and the Blue Ridge Institute do a great job. So that's this Saturday. Just note that. Next Tuesday, if any board members and so forth, employees, just a reminder, we will have our annual flu shot clinic, and if there's any interest there to see human resources, they can help you there. The following week, Thursday, November 3rd, is the employee annual appreciation luncheon, and this will be the first one that we've had in a while since prior to, I think, the pandemic. So I would certainly encourage the board members. That's Thursday, November 3rd. We typically hold that between 11 o'clock and 2 o'clock there at the Essex Center. And certainly, I know the employees would appreciate having board members there, and certainly as we appreciate our employees. Mr. Chairman, on that evening on Thursday, November 3rd, myself, Supervisor Lori Smith, and Supervisor Mike Carter, of course, we currently serve on the Roanoke Valley Allegheny Regional Commission. They'll be holding their annual dinner. If any other board members are maybe interested in that annual dinner, just please let our office know. On Saturday, November the 5th, is the annual Smith Mountain Lake Chili Festival there at Bridgewater Plaza, and so certainly that draws a regional crowd on the shoulder season of our lake and our outside activities. So would certainly look forward to that, and
followed up by that following Tuesday is the election. We do have, I'll be remiss today, Ms. Janet Mitchell, if I didn't say, really appreciate you and the last couple of months serving here on the board. It's been a pleasure to work with you. And of course, November the 8th, there will be a special election in the Snow Creek District as part of the general election to fill the Snow Creek District seat. The annual VACO conference meeting, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, it's in Richmond this year. It's November 13th through the 15th. Mr. Chairman, I think you, as well as Supervisor Smith, will be attending again this year. We do have a matter of business to attend to here. It does require that our board send the two of you as the voting delegates for VACO. So we will need a motion and a second, Mr. Chairman, from the board to affirm, if you will, you as well as Supervisor Smith as our voting delegates, and that's for things on the VACO platform, just like their legislative agenda. So I'll pause there, Mr. Chairman, if you would, and the board would like to entertain that.
All right, we need a motion and then a second and then to appoint. Ronnie, you want to make a motion?
How does the motion need to be read, Mr.?
Just a motion that the board lets us be their delegate at the VACO meeting in November in Richmond.
I make a motion that we let Chairman Thompson, Supervisor Smith be a voting party at the VACO conference in November.
Need a second?
Second.
Madam Clerk, you want to do a roll call vote on that, please?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Supervisor.
I'm still online.
Okay. All right.
I'll still vote.
Okay.
Okay. Supervisor Carter is absent for the vote. Supervisor Cundiff.
Yes.
Supervisor Janet Mitchell.
Yes.
Supervisor Ronald Mitchell.
Yes.
Supervisor Smith.
Yes.
Supervisor Tatum.
Yes.
Chairman Thompson.
Yes. Ms. Mitchell, you had something, a question or comment a while ago? Yes, ma'am. Chris, I
during-
think it's directed to you.
Mr. Whitlow's
Yes.
comments about the Ferrum Festival
Yes.
and it being authentic, I would just like to share with you that I'm part of a hand quilting group, and we will be demonstrating at the Ferrum Festival on Saturday. We will have a quilt in the frame and be quilting on it, so I hope all of you can attend. It's one of the many really interesting things to see at the festival.
Thank you. Mr. Whitlow?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The upcoming November 22nd, of course, the fact that we normally hold our board meetings the third Tuesday of each month, but this board voted last month that we will actually, our regular board meeting will be November the 22nd, Tuesday, November the 22nd, followed by, of course, the Thanksgiving holidays. The Christmas parade, the holiday Christmas parade in Rocky Mount is scheduled for the afternoon of Sunday, December the 4th. And just as in previous years, typically we have a float. The county has a float where board members and their families are allowed to ride on the float in the parade. We've tasked our Parks and Recreation Department Tourism Office with coming up with the float and assisting in that. And so we'll need to know closer in, Mr. Chairman, members of the board's interest in attending the parade and participating.
Mr. Cundiff, you still on with us?
Yes, sir.
Can you get the tractor and the float for the Christmas parade?
I'm very sure that I can. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
You can take care of that for us.
Yes, sir. No problem.
Thank you. That was easy.
Mr. Chairman, I will not be able to participate in that with you guys, as I'll be with my daughter's dance team.
Your daughter, okay. Good luck.
I have a request, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
I would like to ask staff to make sure that the candy that they get for us to hand out is better than what the town gives out, please.
And your daughter, her offer still to help with the float, and Mr. Tatum's daughter helps decorate the float and get it ready.
I'm not going to be Mrs. Claus, okay?
You want to be just Miss Claus?
I'm not going to be Mrs. Claus.
Come on, I'll be Sam. Quit eating, I'll be automatically. Okay.
Yes,
low.
and then, Mr. Chairman, also, just for the board, and we've shared this before, if you can go ahead and make sure your calendars are marked for Thursday, I believe it's a Thursday evening, December the 15th. This will be a joint meeting of the Franklin County Board of Supervisors and our school board. And we're looking at 6 o'clock in the evening on Thursday, November the 15th. And if you all recall, our superintendent was with us last month, and the school board's anticipating, I think, at this meeting to share information on a couple of the capital projects that they've been working on. So that's Thursday, December the 15th. And then, Mr. Chairman, under item 2, under my items, the 2023 legislative agenda discussion, I'll pass these around to the board. Last year, of course, the county worked on its legislative agenda and priorities. And when we do this each year, the board takes a look at VACO, and I've got a copy of VACO's draft agenda as well as West Piedmont, the draft or the agenda that we had last year. And Supervisor Lori Smith was very kind at last month's VACO meeting to prepare and share at the VACO regional meeting, which, by the way, was very well attended by other localities in the region. And so Supervisor Smith has provided an update, and it's really a two-sided, if you will, a very good summation of some legislative priorities. We don't necessarily, as a board today, need to vote on these, but I want to pass this information out to give the board time before the next meeting. So, Mr. Chairman, I'll hand these to you, and we'll take some, and I'll get one here to Mrs. Mitchell.
Mr. Chairman, on the last item that Mr. Whitlow was talking about on December 15th, I'm gonna have a conflict with that.
On
You
the
said,
meeting with the school board?
yeah, you said they were supposed to meet at 6. Is there any way to meet at 5? I'd be able to attend for about an hour, but I've already got something set aside for 6 on the 15th.
Potentially, we have the Franklin Center reserved, Mr. Mitchell, so the pleasure of the board, I can certainly allow the school board, and I know if we met even earlier at 4 or 4:30 or whatever time, to give time, and I can have that discussion.
4:30?
4:30. Like, I've got some at 6 I've already dedicated to that I'm helping set up, so at 6 o'clock I need to be somewhere else on that evening.
We'll see if they can do it at
See if they
4:30,
can do
suit
it
everybody?
earlier.
Everybody's shaking at 4:30, that'll give. Is that okay, Tommy?
Yes, sir. Sounds good. Sounds good.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
And then in regards to the legislative agenda, again, items, these priorities that you have in front of you. Of course, there's draft from VACO, and then there's the summation that Supervisor Smith has provided. And this is something that we will likely and really will need to vote on, I think, at the November meeting. That will be after VACO. VACO would have adopted their legislative agenda, and as last year, it may be where the board would like a specific board member or two, or whatever the case may be, to work together. I know, Ms. Smith, thank you. Last year you did a great job working on this for us. And so I'll just maybe pause there for a board discussion and any other thoughts that you all may have. I know Ms. Smith spent a lot of time with this.
I think it's a good idea to do it. The only thing that I remember, I haven't looked at this yet, that it's, who was that?
Suderline.
Huh?
Dave Suderline.
Said it was too long.
Yeah, and then Ren Williams said he liked it long, so we just need to be comfortable.
We need to be, maybe we can hit a medium.
You need to see that.
Okay.
Yeah, and what I would add, Mr. Chairman, Chris and I were in a meeting last week, and Roanoke County, as an example, they have put theirs in like a palm card format, and it's a palm card that actually has a fold in it that you could fold over, stick it in your jacket pocket, and you can just keep them on your person. So if we choose not to go with how this is just a quick and dirty that I put together, and it's just a thumbnail summarization, but if we want to do something more formalized, I could certainly support that as well.
Well, I think that, I remember them talking about the card, and we've got some contingency money in the board contingency fund, and it can't be that expensive.
It's this. It's this, Mr. Chairman. This.
and we've got some money there. And that right there, something like that. Something like that. Tommy, can you see that, buddy?
Hey, what, sir?
Can you see that?
Yeah.
Okay.
I hear you.
The one question I do have is, are we going to try to have a legislative lunch?
I will say, Ms. Smith, that's a great question. You know, last year, the board did host the legislators here for either a dinner or a lunch. And I think you all did that. I think it was at your December meeting. And so we certainly can do that again. The Regional Commission is hosting a legislative lunch, I think on November the 21st or 23rd. In the region, certainly we'll invite the board. But if the board, and I think, you know, it's a pleasure of the board, but I know the board welcomed the legislators last year in B75. We had our lunch together at the regular meeting. So that's certainly, if something the board, we can work towards that if that's a consensus.
I don't think we had but two, three.
Well, it's kind of, you
But the
need,
whole thing about it is,
got to get on those
we got our
calendars.
point, we got our point across it.
I think we need to it would be great if we could choose a date or an annual date that we can get on their calendars for. That hurts participation when we let them know too late in the season.
Yep.
What about what do y'all feel like? How, the December meeting like we did last year, and we can do that on a regular basis? I think, if I remember right, did we meet about 11 o'clock?
Mm-hmm. Yes, sir.
And we had lunch catered in?
Mr. Chairman, with the redistricting the way that it is, has anything changed? I know there's been some changes as far as the delegate goes, but the state senate wise.
Yeah, it has changed.
That's what I was thinking. So it'd be Bill Stanley instead of Mr. Sudline.
That's correct.
And but the election, I know, is not until next year. So has anything changed until next year? I don't think it changes until after.
Yeah, we've
the
got
election.
Ren Williams until next year
We
as
still got
delegate.
Ren Williams as a delegate.
Yeah, so I think one of the things that I would ask the board, if you gentlemen would be kind enough to look at this abbreviated format and look specifically at the issues to make sure that that's what we want to represent. Please look at that because you may not agree with just some of the things I've chosen out of our longer document from last year. And there are some things that are more emphasized this year. And I think you're going to see it on the VACO legislative agenda as well. And I will adjust this document after we get VACO's legislative summary and their legislative agenda. We'll adjust this accordingly to your desire before the legislative luncheon.
You want to just shoot you an email or something?
Sure.
Okay.
That'd be perfect.
Just do it through an email?
That'd be perfect.
Just do it through an email? Okay.
Thank you very much.
So, Mr. Chairman, if members of the board, if I hear everyone, it looks like then our December meeting again for lunch here with the legislators, and I'll ask our clerk to make a note of that, to coordinate that with the legislator offices at your December meeting, and then consensus then maybe on an annual basis then, that we just continue
Put that in the memo when you contact them, and probably sooner than later for the invite for them to come to we'll have a legislative agenda review.
And I would say we could do a save the date like in August when they're out of session still, or September, and remind them that we have the static date already set.
Yes.
Yeah. I like that card thing that, I think when we do that, we can get that. This is pretty.
Yeah.
Anything else?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, just a couple of things. Well, as many events that I've just went over coming up, very, very busy season coming before us on many things, including the budget. And of course, it just seems like we just finished the budget, and it's one of those things where budget now pretty much in Virginia is really year-round. That being said, when the county went to twice-a-year real estate tax collections this past year, of course, we knew that accelerated our budget schedule because our tax tickets, our real estate tax tickets specifically, have to be ready to go out in early to mid-April. And so that being said, we really are looking at following a very similar budget schedule this year, where we would likely be presenting the county budget tentatively on March the 7th, where the county and the school budgets would be presented. That would give sufficient time then to hold a public hearing on tax rates and so forth around March the 28th. And then the adoption of the budget potentially anywhere between April 3rd and April the 11th. And then, of course, that gives the commissioner time to, with tax tickets and so forth. I say that to say this is very preliminary now. I just want to remind the board next month we'll have a more detailed and hopefully a more detailed discussion with the board. We will, per the board's pleasure, build in the necessary work sessions and so forth that the board and so forth would like to do during the budget process. But I wanted to note that today that it was aggressive last year and it will be aggressive this year in terms of the time and so forth to go through our process. In addition, on that note, Mr. Chairman, we've talked a lot about our financial advisors, Davenport and Company. Mr. Carter recently had a conference call with Davenport regarding some capital school planning and so forth that we know we'll talk more about on December the 15th. But Davenport, our financial advisors, will look to be with us potentially. We need to confirm with them at the November 22nd Board of Supervisors meeting if that date will work for their staff. We're still waiting to confirm back from Davenport on that. So I just wanted to note that with the board. Along those lines, I know a couple of board members, Supervisor Smith, had inquired a date certain on a project overview for Summit View and so forth. So we are still, as we've noted before, we're looking at either the November meeting or the December meeting. Ms. Sims mentioned earlier today, going through the consultants this week, through their analysis and so forth. And we hope that analysis will be very instructive to us, will be updated analysis for the park as we look at graded pads and so forth. So we want to have sufficient time that gets put in, to the presentation and the overview. So to that end. Also, I know Supervisor Smith inquiry last month's board meeting regarding the Glade Hill Fire Station update and how progress and so forth was going with that. And of course, we shared some information in a weekly Friday packet a couple of weeks ago, and I've got some more detailed information today on the project. The project is, like with most projects, in terms of a delay, I think it's a 48 day was the latest delay in terms of the project calendar, the schedule. So we're still looking around April 1st. Of course, the grading was the significant delay. There was a lot of weather and so forth, rain this summer with the subcontractor. I think one of the supervisors may have asked about change orders. There have been a few change orders, not significant. There was actually a change order that with a credit, which we're very pleased with. It was about a $56,000 credit. To that end, there were a couple of other change orders in terms of there was a cut trench that had to be done near the stormwater detention pond, and as I understand with the excavator, that took some time. That has now been completed. And so of course, we're still with the credit, we're to the good in terms of the change orders. With the credit, we're actually above with the credit. Of course, there were other things in there with rock allowance and project contingencies, but staff has noted currently we're to the good, but we are expecting some, again, about a 48 delay. Now that could
And we'll talk about the mass drain fields in the special use permit application. Staff analysis, the property has been zoned B2 since zoning went into place in 1988. So this little small portion of the B2, nothing would be able to be constructed on it. It's, like I said, just to bring the building into compliance. There's no additional uses for this rezone. Basically, as staff, we think this is definitely a good zoning practice to get a building into compliance, and the property owner is willing to do that. And the comprehensive plan would support this request. There would be no change to the zoning district, and it would not be substantially detrimental to any of the adjacent properties. Your planning commission held their public hearing. They made a recommendation to rezone with one proffer, and the proffer is to for the minor site plan to be built into substantial standards with the site with the concept plan, which it would be. Once, if this is approved, like I said, they'll get the boundary line adjustment. I would be glad to answer any question, and the applicant is here if to give you a brief presentation or to answer any questions.
Anybody got any questions?
No, sir.
I have none. It's in the Boone District, and I have none. All right, no questions, anything? I'll open the public hearing. Is there anybody here signed up wish to speak to this? Madam Clerk.
No, Mr. Chairman, I don't have any speakers.
All right, is there anybody here that wishes to speak to this rezoning request? Anybody? Oh, come forward, sir. State your name and address for the record, please.
My name is Nicholas Montgomery, address of 61 Westcott Road in Rocky Mount. I'm just the one trying to get the permit put through. If y'all have any questions, I just want to make myself available.
Nobody has any questions, sir. Thank you.
All righty.
Thanks.
All right, I'll close the public hearing. We'll go back in session. I need a motion. Ron?
I'll make that motion. Let me flip back to the one we were on. Let's see. Mr. Chairman, I make a motion. I find that the proposed rezone will not be a substantial detriment to adjacent properties, as in good zoning practice, will not change the character and aesthetic values of the zoning district, and will be in harmony with the public health, safety, and general welfare to the community. Therefore, I move to recommend approval of the applicant's request to rezone the property from A1 agricultural to B2 general business, with the one proffer submitted by the applicant as recommended by the planning commission.
Second.
Thank you, sir. I need a second.
Second.
Madam Clerk, we do a roll call vote, please.
Supervisor Carter is absent for the vote. Supervisor Cundiff is absent for the vote. Supervisor Janet Mitchell?
Yes.
Supervisor Ronald Mitchell?
Yes.
Supervisor Smith?
Yes.
Supervisor Tatum?
Yes.
Chairman Thompson?
Yes. All right, Ms. Cooper, Director of Planning, application for the Nicholas Montgomery applicant, Dorothy Montgomery, for request for a special use permit.
Since we've done a brief background, I don't think we need to do that again. I would just like to go to the concept plan. The health department is requiring a mass drain field for the boarding kennel. So as you can see to this concept plan, it will, obviously come out of the building, and the mass drain field will be on this property. And as I stated before, this is property that Mr. Montgomery's parents own, and they don't have a problem with the mass drain field being on here. The property is very large, so I don't foresee any problems. So your staff analysis, basically this drain field is going to be used for the kennel and the kennel alone. This parcel is large, so the drain field is not going to take that much of the agricultural land. Basically, the neighbors shouldn't be able to see anything because it's a drain field, so the land should stay the same. So the comprehensive plan would support this mass drain field for this business. And again, we do not see how it would change the character of the zoning district or be substantially detrimental to any of the adjacent property owners. And the Planning Commission held their public hearing and did recommend for the special use permit to be approved with 3 conditions. The first one is the proposed off-site mass drain field shall be built in substantial to the minor site plan that was submitted by Parker Design. Prior to construction, the applicant shall submit a plat prepared by a licensed surveyor and recorded in the county's land records showing the proposed off-mass drain field and all the criteria for section 25-144 that's located in our zoning ordinance. And the applicant would also have to adhere to any erosion settlement control and/or stormwater management regulations during site plan review. And I would be glad to answer any questions. And again, Mr. Montgomery is here if you have questions of him.
Anybody got any questions for Lisa? Thank you, ma'am. All right, we'll go in and I'll open the public hearing. Madam Clerk, you got anyone signed up to speak?
No, Mr. Chairman, I have no speakers for this item.
One here wish to speak? Mr. Montgomery, will you come forward, please? I got a question for you.
Yes, sir.
What kind of dogs you gonna have?
Any kind.
Any
All
kind?
kinds.
All kinds.
Yes, sir.
Okay, good answer. Thank you, sir.
That was easy.
That was easy, wasn't it? Anybody else have any questions?
I had a question before Lisa walked away.
We'll close the public hearing. All right, Lisa, come on. No, you come back.
I'm
You
sorry,
go.
Mr. Chairman. I jumped ahead. I'm sorry.
No, you go right ahead now.
Okay. Lisa, in reading the report, obviously it's open as to whether there's going to be a requirement to meet stormwater regs with the disturbance of more than an acre.
Mm-hmm.
Why don't we know that now?
Why don't we know that now? Well, I guess we could look at the acreage. We just always do it in site plan review. Is that something?
Well, my concern, and I mean, every supervisor's meeting I say this, but we don't have a code enforcement officer.
Right.
This is very open-ended. So we're being asked to approve something that is, we don't know if it's needed or not.
Well, let me ease your mind about that. I do have 3 people that do erosion settlement control and stormwater. So during the site plan review, when the engineer submits the erosion settlement control and stormwater report, we review it. So we'll know then if we need stormwater or E&S. If it's over 10,000 square feet, it's going to trigger it. This is going to trigger it. So we just do the work after this is approved.
I
But
know.
if it's something that you want staff to dive into more in the concept plan, I'm sure that I can get Mr. Wilson to give a more elaborate.
We're fine.
Okay.
Thank you.
Does that open any other questions? All right, need a motion.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
I find that the use will not be a substantial detriment to adjacent properties, that the character of the zoning district will not be changed thereby, and that such use will be in harmony with the uses permitted by right in the zoning district and with the public health, safety, and general welfare of the community. Therefore, I move to recommend approval of the applicant's request for the special use permit and to allow the off-site mass drain field with the 3 conditions recommended by the Planning Commission.
Need a second?
Second.
Madam Clerk, we do a roll call vote, please?
Supervisor Carter is absent for the vote. Supervisor Cundiff is absent for the vote. Supervisor Janet Mitchell.
Yes.
Supervisor Ronald Mitchell.
Yes.
Supervisor Lori Smith.
Yes.
Supervisor Tim Tatum.
Yes.
Chairman Thompson.
Yes. Okay, go get your kennel open. Y'all have a good day. All right, any other matters by supervisors? Mr. Taylor?
I do have one. I need for Mr. Sandy, if he will come to the podium. A couple of months back, I requested that the county be the applicant for a grant to assist the college in replacing the culvert pipes in front of the firm Mercantile. And I just wanted Mr. Sandy to bring us up to speed and tell us where we're at and where we need to go next and what actions that this board may need to take.
Sure. So we did work with the Planning District Commission, West Piedmont, as well as the Ferrum Water Sewer Authority and Ferrum College, and we actually developed a application that we submitted to VDEM, which is the Virginia Department of Emergency Management. Last Thursday, I think it was submitted. The pre-application that we submitted to VDEM was well received, so we feel confident that we should be able to get funding. The total project at this location included culvert replacement at the entrance to the Mercantile, which is right there along Route 40. There's been flooding problems kind of for several years, many years, that floods the Mercantile property, floods the Ferrum Police Station sometimes, and also gets across Route 40 at times too, depending on the volume of water. And so the proposal is to replace those culvert pipes with larger pipes to handle the flow that's coming through there. With that, it was identified that a water line is really close to that, and so that water line really needs to be relocated as part of that project. And so it's really, truly a joint project between the college and the Ferrum Water and Sewer Authority and the county as the official applicant on this. So all that being said, the application was submitted. The total estimated cost of the project was about $1.2 million. Which includes relocation of a water line, sewer line, the culvert replacements, crosswalk across 40, and some sidewalks is kind of the scope of the project. With that, there is a required 5% match. And so what that would require, or what we've discussed to this point, is that match would be split 3 ways between the college, who actually owns the property, the county as the applicant, and the Ferrum Water and Sewer Authority, because the replacement of the water and sewer pipe is a benefit to the water authority and the sewer authority, and obviously the improvements to that business property there is a benefit to the county and to the colleges as well as mitigating that flooding issue, safety issue on Route 40. What that equates to is roughly about $18,000 that might be needed as a match if we're successful. Again, at this point, we don't know for sure if the project will be funded, but we have submitted the application. The Ferrum Water and Sewer Authority actually has preliminarily agreed to $20-some thousand because the 5% of their portion of the project actually is a little bit more, and the college has initially committed to the $18,000 as well. So it's like I said, a 3-way kind of split to make that match. And so we have identified a potential funding source on the county side if we're successful, as in our capital budget we have a line item for village improvements, utilities, and housing, and that has a balance of $150,000 plus or minus, $150,000 plus or minus. And so we would propose that if we're successful in getting the funding, that we take the 18 plus or minus 18,000 from that account at that time. But what we could do, I think what we're looking for now is just if we need to send a letter to VDEM that says, we're committed to that funding, be able to send that to them. If we're successful with the grant, we would obviously have to come back to actually formally, accept the grant and use that money at that point. So I think what we're looking for now is really just maybe a consensus that we feel like we can move forward in that direction with that cost share option.
That'll have to come back to the board as an agenda item, since it deals with money.
If we're successful,
If we're
yes,
successful,
to accept it and allocate that money towards that match. Yes, sir. Sometimes with or after the grant application, the funding agency wants to know that, hey, are you committed to doing this? And so what we would propose is, if there's consensus with the board, that we could send a letter that says, if successfully funded, the board is committed to paying its share of that local match with our partners, so the Water and Sewer Authority and Ferrum College.
How do y'all feel about it?
Well, right now, the property, it's a valuable piece of property that the college owns, and there are businesses that have shown interest in going in there and purchasing that property, but no one's going to touch it until those pipes are fixed. because it is, I mean, it's coned off now. You're not allowed to drive over it because.
Yeah, there's actually sinkholes in the, so just, I think from my perspective anyway, I think that's a big reason we put that line item in the capital budget is for these type of things, to have a match, a source of match funding to kind of make these kind of improvements to utilities and villages. And as Mr. Tatum said, really kind of promote these areas for, you know, future development, so.
I think it's important to the community that we stay in good standings with the college, because they are a significant part of Franklin County and have been for years. And in the budget that we've got $18,000, and it's already in the budget at a place that it can come out. That's my thoughts. What about the rest of you?
Roll on.
I think you've got a consensus. Everybody's nodding their head, yes. So
Okay. All right, well, thank you.
think
Well,
we got a
now we'll just
consensus.
wait and see if it actually gets
if
funded.
it happens, if it actually happens,
Right.
but you already know that though. It has to come back as an
Correct.
agenda item for the money to be allocated.
Correct. And this, you didn't mention it before, but, you know, we just finished the bridge, the pedestrian bridge, and this is kind of almost really another piece to that, as that connection between the college and the, you know, the business district, if you will, there in Ferrum. So just another piece to kind of that village improvements through that area.
How long have you been getting water in the police department?
Since the early 90s.
Really?
Yeah.
30 years.
And nobody said nothing about it
They have a
before?
big, well, the pipes have just started to collapse. So, I mean, we just always went out and moved our vehicles out of the way.
Wow.
2 years ago, they sandbagged the doors.
Put sandbags up?
Yeah. Made it come in a different door.
Ain't come in the window then.
Yeah.
All right, anybody else got anything?
I do, Mr. Chairman. I have one thing. You all have demonstrated and approved support of me moving the Westlake Halesford Village Plan into a Phase 2. And we have started that. We've had a couple meetings. I'll ask Mr. Whitlow to kind of tag team with me on this. Staff has been successful in working with West Piedmont to secure a grant for $100,000 to do a corridor study. And West Piedmont has assisted us, I think, on 3 or 4 other occasions in this same vein. And so the corridor study is going to look at multimodal transportation infrastructure. It will look at access, ingress and egress for the residential places there, as well as commercial. We're going to be looking at potential for benches, streetlights, sidewalks, et cetera. So we'll get this study done, and it will inform the Westlake Halesford group in a more specific way, and it will also, importantly, help us leverage grant opportunities, having done the work and having defined what the need is. And I am very excited about this because Westlake is experiencing some exciting prospects that are coming. And I think that we're at such a good window of timing with looking at how we can, make this corridor walkable, interconnected, so that we build community in there and it's a designated growth area. And I like what's going on at Ferrum. You've got a designated growth area there. And, so I've long, said that we really need to focus on the DGAs with purpose. And I feel like that this grant opportunity is a good one. I wanted to bring it to you for your information. Mr. Whitlow, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, thank you, Ms. Smith. Yeah, a great opportunity with our partners with West Piedmont Plain District Commission. Similar along the vein, West Piedmont, of course, worked to secure from Virginia Housing Authority, if you all recall, a master planning grant that didn't require a local match, which is fantastic for the property at Ferrum, and that process is ongoing. We've been very encouraged recently with a lot of interest in that property for housing for moderate income housing. That's just one example, but West Piedmont's a great partner. I will say, we think, West Piedmont thanks the staff there that this is an excellent shot at securing those funds. They haven't been not necessarily secured just yet. It's through the state of Virginia through Transportation Alternative Program. I forget the exact acronym, but long story short, it's a good opportunity there. As I noted earlier, we're seeing a significant amount of growth along the Westlake corridor. The groundbreaking this morning of the Ridgeview Bank. There's a couple of other commercial activities that we are generally aware of, as well as some additional housing as the new housing comes on, and that whole multimodal look at the corridor. Securing the grant, West Piedmont securing this grant certainly actually helps us potentially for future grants, whether it's sidewalk connectivity to trails or whether it's intersection improvement. So we're pretty excited about this opportunity.
So I just share that, Mr. Chairman, with the board. As we move along, I'll give you updates and be happy to answer any questions or concerns you have.
Thank you for that update. Is that, we had a meeting, it's probably been about a year ago, public hearing, and it was talking about the walkway across.
The Westlake Trail?
Yeah.
That's part of these discussions. Yeah, I know that we've got an outstanding grant application through the federal government. I don't have, I thought we were supposed to get some kind of word on that by the end of the summer, and I know staff's inquired, but we don't have, the answer to that grant's proposal. But we still have money left from the initial grant to add to that, and we have, staff has worked at updating the trail plan. So I really think that we'll get the Westlake Trail completed, and it's going to be another integral piece that I'm really excited about in terms of creating a really cool designated growth area, taking advantage of that asset there, the lake, which, we are growing like crazy down there right now. And that's a good thing. And so I think our designated growth areas give us a tremendous opportunity to try to diversify Franklin County's revenue streams and to sustain us for the long haul. And I just want to do my part, and I want to do my best at bringing the Westlake Halesford corridor to a standard that supports the entire county.
Anyone else, Ron?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chris, Steve, this one thing I want to talk about, I asked for some numbers on training and stuff. So when a training class is held, if we get a certain amount of students, I might not know all the details about this, but I'd like for y'all to look into it. If we get a certain amount of participants for a class, we get help from Virginia Fire Programs as far as paying for instructors. But we do have a budget for training. So I'll use this past weekend, the basic pump ops class. From my understanding, we only had 6 people who signed up for it, and it got canceled a couple of days before for lack of attendance. I don't know what that magic number is, but is there a way that we could have a plan like when this happens again? Because there's 6 volunteers that didn't get to get that training this past weekend who had not planned anything for that weekend for 2 months in advance. Is there something we can have in place where we can quickly say, hey, look, we've got county funds, let's go ahead and still have the class? Because fire programs only pays for the instructors, correct?
Correct. That's my understanding.
That's how I understood it too. So like, it'd be a fail-safe plan, would that be a proper?
Contingency
Just to
plan,
assure that we're still getting our volunteers the training that they need. Because, paid staff can get their training while they're on duty. The volunteers have to do it on their days off. And if they plan to do this training, we need to carry through with the training, whether we meet the state's requirements or not.
And I think even beyond that is trying to recruit more to meet that magic number.
Recruitment would be great. Yes,
Yeah,
thank you.
enough to make the class.
And then the other item I have is just an announcement on my behalf. I'm doing this early just to let my constituents know that they need to start looking for someone else for the Blackwater District, because I will not seek re-election. I will not campaign next year. I won't seek re-election. So I have a wonderful family at home, and that's where my focus needs to be. So the people of Blackwater need to start looking for a new supervisor, because once I get done next year, I'm done. So I'll try to enjoy this last year with you guys and go on about my way. So just want to make that known so they have time to start recruiting a new supervisor. That's all I got, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Mitchell? Mitchell, you got anything? Believe it or not, I had one thing, and you talked about it in that recruit and retention. That was the insurance, so that was already out there on the table, so thank you.
Great minds think alike.
I guess so, I guess so. All right. All right, we come to a time in our meeting where public comment period, and this is with the citizens would like to speak. Ladies and gentlemen, we've reached the time set aside in our meeting for public comment. Public comment gives citizens an opportunity to address the board in person or in writing on other matters appropriate to the responsibilities of the board. Speakers must direct all comments to the board as a whole and not to individual board members or employees of the board or the county. Personal attacks and insulting, profane, or vulgar language will not be tolerated. Likewise, commentary on issues that are not within the purview of the board and that are not a function of local government and over which we have no control are not acceptable. Public comment is not a question and answer session, and board members will not answer questions during public comment. If a speaker violates these rules, the chair may rule the speaker out of order, and the second violation, have the speaker removed from the podium. Madam Clerk, do we have anybody signed up for public comment?
Yes, sir. Jeff Francis, can you please come to the podium?
Sir, if you'll come forward, state your name and address for the board, for the record, please.
My name is Jeff Francis. I live at 207 Montgomery Farms Avenue in Bonita. I came here knowing full well that the application for a special use permit 0722173898.
Sir, will you speak into the mic, please?
Can you, okay. Came here to comment on the withdrawal related to special permit 0722173898, which was an application for a special use to effectively build a self-storage commercial facility. And ironically, I found it interesting that tonight you actually had an application where the property owners went through the formal process of rezoning the land. And that's what I would have expected to have happened here, that before anything was even considered, if you're going to have a commercial endeavor in property that's zoned 1A or low-density residential, that it would be rezoned first and then public comment related to it. To me, special use for agricultural land is putting up a paddock, a pole barn and such, where low density might be patio homes versus restricted use, age-restricted type thing. So all I wanted to say is that in the future, I'd hope that if you consider something like this at all, that the land would be zoned properly to begin with. You've talked about the Westlake Halesford corridor tonight. That is where these types of ventures belong, not next to residential communities. And I can certainly, understand that there's another venture called Brownies. It's been there before any of us even lived here. But that's all I'd like to say about this, is to consider that this was zoning, not a special use permit. Thank you.
Thank you.
Glenna Moore?
First, I'd like to offer an apology to Chairman Thompson. In reviewing last month's public comments, I realized I did not respond to a very cordial greeting you gave me. So chalk it up to nervousness, please.
It's okay. How are you tonight?
I missed that too. What'd you say?
I said, how are you tonight?
I'm fine, thank you. Good evening. Glenna Hawkins Moore, 45 Scenic River Drive, Rocky Mount. It is amazing how ex-slaves and their descendants were able to maneuver through America's Jim Crow era and retain their dignity. The United Daughters of the Confederacy worked hard to vindicate their Confederate men who lost the war to American forces, which included 85,000 United States colored troops. At least 80 of them were from Franklin County. The UDC's plan was to indoctrinate Southern white school children with the lost cause myth that the Daughters called truth. They made sure it was passed on to future generations. They established Children of the Confederacy clubs. They banned history books that didn't teach the lost cause narrative. They sat on textbook selection boards to ensure their version of Confederate history was in print in every Southern white child's hand. All of my great-grandparents were enslaved. Their children were not born into slavery, but were forced into Jim Crow segregation. My mother's parents owned a farm in Suntag. Grandpa Sam served in a segregated World War I military unit, believing that his war participation would make the world safer for democracy and make America less racist. He returned to a racially segregated Franklin County where he was only allowed to go to back doors of white homes in Suntag. He served as treasurer of the newly formed Franklin County NAACP in 1948. My father's parents were college graduates. My grandfather was a Baptist minister, and my grandmother was a teacher in Concord, North Carolina, where the local UDC built a monument to the Ku Klux Klan. Those grandparents established the First Baptist Church Christian Aid Society. Through community memberships, the Christian Aid Society purchased or built rental houses and a grocery store offering affordable housing and groceries to an underserved, racially harassed Black community. The Franklin County Confederate Monument was erected 45 years after the Civil War to empower it on the courthouse lawn in the 21st century after the descendants of slaves and victims of Jim Crow politely ask you to move it from our seat of justice is disappointing. My legacy to my grandchildren is that every generation of their forefathers fought for a more inclusive America and a more humane South. They know that it was African American blood, sweat, and tears that made Southern prosperity possible. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Bill Good. I have no additional speakers.
Is there excuse me, is there anyone else here tonight that wishes to address the board? Thank you. Seeing none, we'll go back into session. I would like to remind everyone that our meeting for November will be changed from the third Tuesday to the fourth Tuesday because of the VACO meeting in Richmond. And some of us will be there and will not be back, so we've changed it from the third Tuesday to the fourth, which is November the 22nd. All right, we've had a long day, so now we've got to go into closed session. We thank each and every one of you for being here, for participating in your county government. Mr. Taylor.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, the Franklin County Board of Supervisors will motion to enter into a closed meeting in accordance with 2.2-3711, A1 personnel discussion and appointments to county boards and commissions, etc. A5 discussion concerning prospective business or industry or the expansion of an existing business or industry. A8 consultation with legal counsel regarding specific legal matters requiring the provision of legal advice. And A29 discussion of the terms of a public contract of the Code of Virginia as amended.
Need a second?
Second.
Madam Clerk, we do a roll call vote, please.
Supervisor Carter is absent for the vote. Supervisor Cundiff is absent for the vote. Supervisor Janet Mitchell.
Yes.
Supervisor Ronald Mitchell.
Yep.
Supervisor Smith.
Yes.
Supervisor Tatum.
Yes.
Chairman Thompson.
Yes. I'm going to go back to the administrator's office.
That will happen.
First time it's ever happened to me.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I've never had a problem.
I need to
Guess
get
this
mine.
year's mix is different.
I was being truthful in the I was being truthful in the CVS questionnaire, and it's like, sorry, you can't register for a flu shot. I'll just lie next time.
Why couldn't you?
It was asking about like if you had like any of these symptoms in prior, and then I was like, yeah, and then like, have you had COVID? I was like, no, and then next time I was like, sorry, you don't qualify. I'll lie next time.
Yeah.
Like everyone else.